A man, standing with a bottle in his hands, aggressively asks where his daughter has gone. He shouts threateningly at her to come home immediately. The girl, looking out from behind the door, watches what is happening with fear. She decides that the only way she can escape from her parent is by climbing the stairs. Suddenly, she accidentally trips and falls head over heels to the very bottom, which ultimately causes her death. The dark cradle was the beginning of it all. Karina, walking through the ruins, carefully adjusts her hood. A small snake named Karan suddenly crawls out of her cloak. Suddenly, the girl notices a familiar face in a pile of rubble. She didn't understand how Renegar could have ended up in this place. Karina looks at his condition and decides that the guy is dying. The zombies ask their mistress to make him immortal so that he can join them. The girl does not understand why Renegar decided to die right before her eyes. She believed that if he was going to commit suicide, he needed to do it quickly. Karina escaped from the tower in search of a comfortable life, but suddenly found herself in an ambush. First, she decides to try to save the guy's life. She knew very well that in reality, Renegar was supposed to die in the arms of the main character, Penelope. According to the plot, the guy was another main character and the girl's first love. There was no way he could have died at the very beginning of history. It was really needed for the awakening of the main character. After Renegar's death, Penelope decides to take revenge, develops her abilities, and becomes the protector of this world. Besides this, she gets rid of half-humans like Karina. This is the novel the girl found herself in when she was reborn. Karina knew everything in advance, so she decided to escape early. One of the main character's special skills is tracking down the killer. With this ability, she can see the memories of the deceased. The girl knew that if Penelope saw her in her beloved's memories, she would immediately decide that it was she who killed him. After this, the main character will obviously decide to deal with the culprit. As a child, Karina understood perfectly well that she was reborn with memories from a past life. She couldn't even imagine that she would end up in the world described in the novel. The girl slowly descends from the dark cradle and approaches the mirror. At first glance, she was an ordinary child. But something was wrong. If you looked closely, you could see scales on her hands. In addition, the girl had very unusual eyes, which made her look like a snake. Someone suddenly entered the room, pleasantly surprised that she had woken up. The girl had serious doubts that this creature could be called a human. The man who entered calls a guy named Sean over, and he obediently enters the room. The creature grabs the child by the chin and turns him towards the boy, asking him to look at it. Suddenly, she feels her eyes burning intensely. The girl looks angrily at the grinning man when she feels a little better. She decides to take another look at Sean, when suddenly she notices that he has turned into a statue. The creature notes with a grin that she was only born and is already taking someone's life. He praises himself, saying that he tried hard when he created it. The man grabs her in his arms and tells her that it's time to give her a name. He hugs her and calls her Karina Apocalypta. The creature asks her to remember her last name well, because she will have to become the greatest instrument. Although he told her to remember it, there was no need to do so, since the girl was already familiar with the word. Apocalypta is the place where half-humans are created, also known as the Tomb of the Gods. Just before her death, the girl read about the main villain of this novel, her current father, Richie. For a long time, Apocalypse brought the world to the point of complete destruction. But this has come to an end. Ultimately, the main character, having received the Lord's blessing, will win, and the Tomb of the Gods will disappear from the face of the earth. The child suddenly realizes that in the body of the newborn Karina, she is a hero who will be among the first to be hit. The girl sits by Renegar's bed, lost in her own thoughts. She had no idea what to do with the patient. What she was most worried about was that her brothers would find out about it. What made things more complicated was that she was no longer part of the apocalypse. There were several reasons why she renounced her last name. She turned away from the father who created her, the one who gave her her name, and who, with the help of black magic, single-handedly turned himself into such a monster. Richie told his daughter that God himself had rejected him. He asked Karina what she would do if she ruled this world. The creature managed to take away and absorb the relics of 3 major divine families, and decided to keep this power for itself. Unfortunately for him, the people of these blessed families were strong. Richie failed, but decided not to give up and come up with a new plan. Then, he decided to combine the ancient monster and the man in one body, creating them, his children. He ordered them to protect him until they themselves died. The man said that this was the only reason for their existence, Karina read this novel in her past life. The book that described this villain was the girl's second life. In the end, good triumphs over evil. And even if Apocalypse has been leading the world to complete destruction for a long time, the main character will still win in the end. Karina believed that while she was in this body, it would not be so easy to kill her. Despite this, she knew that her fate was very cruel. She remembers how she died in a past life, while trying to escape from her aggressive father. Then, she thought that she had finally managed to escape this hell, since she now had brothers and sisters who would take care of her. The children told her that they would protect her, and that she should not listen to their father. They asked the girl to follow the path she had chosen. She never thought that this life would be worse than the previous one. After some time, Richie injected his daughter with a syringe, asking if she could feel her brothers and sisters in her body. He starts counting, and says that it seems there are as many as 13 of them. The creature wonders if its child is happy. He says that thanks to her body, these useless creatures will become stronger. The girl had to endure their death, but she herself could not die. Besides this, she could no longer continue such a life. First, she decided to grow her strength. The girl looked at the whole group of people, causing them to immediately turn into statues. She was a monster who had the power of a jellyfish. Karina suddenly noticed that her eyes still hurt when using the ability. Chiron emerged from his hiding place and decided to report that there were still those who had managed to escape. He was outraged that she did not leave him anything to eat, turning everyone into stone. The girl promised him a monster when they returned, and the snake said he wanted a griffin. She pointed out that Luna would be angry with them then, and Charon stated that he was not afraid of such a low-ranking half-monster. He suddenly announced that her abilities had become stronger. The snake suggested that she could defeat 30 people at once. Karina told him that she still wanted to become even stronger. She spread her wings, reminding herself that if she didn't kill, she would die. The girl asked herself who was destined to bear responsibility for all her sins. Chiron reminded us that death is birth, and Apocalypse, which is so closely connected with death, is the divine coming itself. He noted that she was already strong enough, which the girl did not agree with. Karina stated that she must surpass Jael's strength in order to kill him. She descended to the ground and was immediately met by people from the Church of the Seven Apostles. They were the ones who gave up their humanity and paid with their life force for the Apocalypse to protect them from their enemies. One of them decided to tell Karina about information on new members. The girl told him that Saladin would be coming soon, so it should be given to him, because she did not deal with such matters. The guy was embarrassed and immediately agreed with her. When Karina walked away, he happily shared with his friend that she smiled at him. He noted that her dark blue hair was comparable to that of the goddess of the night. The guy guessed that she had green eyes, just like the god of the earth. The girl understood that she was incredibly lucky with her face, because all she had to do was smile a little, and these people were ready to move mountains. The only thing that upset her was that because of this, they clung to her like annoying flies. Suddenly, Karina heard a very loud sound behind her. She turned around and saw her brother, Saladin, standing in front of her. His ears perked up, and his tail began to wag non-stop when he saw the woman standing in front of him. The guy said that he wanted to come right away, but Lathem's people followed him. He told her not to worry, because he was not wounded, and the blood on his shirt belonged to people. Karina said that she was glad that he was safe, which immediately made the guy blush. He said happily, jumping up and down, that he was incredibly happy when she was worried about him. Saladin was already 16 years old, and the girl had no idea why he still hadn't learned to hide his monster appearance. She asked her brother to sort out the papers that people brought them. Richie was so happy when he created Saladin that he even held a celebration in his honor. The boy failed to live up to his father's expectations, as his abilities never developed, leaving him almost expendable. Thanks to Karina, he managed to survive, after which he began to follow her like a little tail. If everything had gone according to the plot, his powers would have awakened after Richie decided to place him in the black lava for processing, and that is why Saladin would have survived without the help of his sister. However, in the future, Karina needed allies. Besides, it seemed to her that they had already become quite close. Suddenly, the guy cut off the head of one of the people talking to him. He said that perhaps it was worth listening to the dead man to the end. He also asked if any of them wanted to try to justify themselves. Saladin Apocalypse was a servant of the underworld, crossed with a Cerberus and capable of spewing the fires of hell. Karina understood that her brother knew everything perfectly well. Because of her, they were defeated in the first holy war against the monsters and were scattered across the land. These were the consequences of the choice she made, which was not in the original plot. Thanks to this, she had the chance to kill Richie in secret and gain his necromancer power. Even though the girl's wounds had not completely healed and her original strength had weakened, she did this in order to simply stay alive and live a quiet life. She understood that only if her brothers did not find her, she would be able to live in peace. Karina asks herself how it happened that Renegar caught her eye. Karan wonders why she brought this man home. She says that the guy is the master of the holy sword. The snake crawls up to Renegar and looks at him questioningly. The girl understands what a perfect face is, as if God had sculpted it with his own hands. She will never be able to forget. She recalls the events of the first holy war against monsters. Then the girl was not afraid of death, because her goal was only to kill the enemy. Last time she thought the guy was very young, but now he seemed much older. Chiron says they need to kill Renegar as soon as possible, but the girl asks her servants to just continue healing him. The snake asks if there is any other reason for this. Karina says that if she is the last person he sees before he dies, they will come for her. She says that if he is to be killed, it must be done somewhere else. Chiron sighs, again surprised by her vague predictions. It was much easier for the girl when she gave out what she knew about what was happening in the novel as her predictions. Renegar was the master of the holy sword and the first love of the novel's main character. The guy was doomed to die at the very beginning of the plot for the sake of awakening Penelope. After Renegar dies, the main character will go mad with grief and her abilities will awaken, and together with the allied forces, she will attack Apocalypta. She will be able to track them down by the trail of death thanks to the ability inherited from her mother, and Penelope will find the dark magician who killed her lover and then destroy him. If everything went according to the plot, the main character would be chasing this magician. As a result, since Karina is next to the guy, she will chase after her. The girl understands that she simply cannot allow this. In her opinion, Penelope could have headed a mental hospital, since the novel had an age restriction not because of the intimate scenes, but because of its incredible cruelty. It wasn't because of the unbalanced male characters, but because of the main character. Karina realizes that she absolutely does not want to become enemy number one for all these people. She asks the snake not to interfere with Renegar's treatment and to just leave him alone. The girl promises that she will still get rid of him as soon as he comes to his senses. She is about to leave when suddenly Karan indignantly asks how she can leave the house in such a situation. Karina tells the snake not to hang around the guy when he comes to. Karan wonders why he should hide from such a boy. She tells him that holy power flows in his blood, and then leaves. Seal works hard at his job using magic. He exhales and, turning to Karina, asks her to hand him the bandages. She suddenly shudders, which slightly frightens the guy. The girl apologizes and says that she was just thinking about something. Seal thought that she was always working very hard, but right now she had a very gloomy face, which was very unusual for her. He says that she can contact him at any time if something is bothering her. The guy notes that they have known each other for a whole year. Karina recalls how it all began when she cured a boy and began working in this hospital. She suddenly realizes how ridiculous her situation is. A girl with the ability to kill a person with just one look began saving people from death. For her, words of gratitude were a drug, and tears of loss of a loved one were poison. She understood that death would come anyway, but she simply did not want to take part in it. Karina believed that it would be better to die happy. Seal suddenly reports that there was unrest in the temple again. He says that new victims have appeared, after which he asks the girl to take care of them. The guy informs her that she will be able to go home early as soon as she finishes everything. He suddenly remembers that the guard asked him to pass something on. Seal says that strange rumors have started circulating around Apocalypta. He reports that they apparently had other reasons for attacking the Allied forces. The guy notes that it feels like they were looking for someone. He says that workers were asked to report immediately if they saw a suspicious person. Seal also asks her to let him know if she notices anything strange. He notes that they don't need problems at all. Karina remembers that she also saw something today when she went to look for the dead to make them her servants. A flag was planted in the temple, stating that what was happening was done in the name of the apocalypse. The girl immediately realized that it was Jael's handiwork. The guy was crossed with a vampire and became the most powerful villain in the world. He was the one who desired Karina's blood, so he was probably looking for her now. Besides this, Jael was also the killer of the Holy Knight Renegade. The guy suddenly jumps out of bed, waking up from sleep, and is surprised that he is still alive. On the continent of Hebrea, there has been a legend for a long time. God, when creating his children, immediately blessed them. The sun god gave the Kambit clan a staff, and it was believed that it created everything on earth, and his people called its power magical and put this magic into their staffs. The goddess of war gave the ring to the Dyphon clan, and the people imbued it with the power of destruction and made a contract with the spirits. The god of the seas gave the Latham clan a sword. Since the sea is the source of life, Latham praised the power of life and invested it in this sword. Renegar, breathing heavily, is surprised that he is still alive. He suddenly realizes that he was able to lose to Apocalypse. The guy remembers how on the way to the Kuhuran temple, they met a bloody man. He controlled the wind and blew away 100 warriors at once. Then, the next 100 warriors fell at his single step. Wherever he flew, only pools of blood remained, and if his own blood fell on a knight, then human flesh began to rot, and the warrior fell. Renegar, trying to fight off the attacker, heard a familiar voice in his head. Someone asked him to hold on and continue the fight, until the guy realized that he could not do it anymore. Suddenly, his grip weakened, and the sword fell from his hands. He felt that it would be better for him to die. Renegar didn't understand how such a weakling could call himself the owner of a holy sword. He decided to die so that the weapon would go to someone more worthy. But for some reason, he remained alive. The guy assumes that one of the residents brought him to his home and treated him all this time. Tears of joy well up in his eyes as he realizes once again that he has managed to survive. Suddenly, Renegar realizes that there is nothing to be happy about here. He, as a holy knight, had to give his life in the name of the Lord. But in the end, he rejoiced because he remained alive, even though he was weak. Suddenly, a painfully familiar voice comes into his head again. The guy glances at the sword standing not far from him. He approaches the weapon and reports that he has finally woken up. Sword doesn't understand how such weak magic could knock the guy off his feet. He asks if Renegar understands where he is. The guy assumes that he is now at his savior's home. Suddenly, he notices someone strange nearby. In front of him appears the walking corpse of a black cat. Renegar grabs the sword, but he tells him to calm down, as the animal is not going to attack him. The weapon reports that the house smells of apocalypse. He reminds them that they must destroy them all. The sword says that this is their main duty. The boy's eyes darken, and his mind becomes clouded, and he immediately agrees with his master. Karina recalls Ciel's words that Apocalypta had other reasons for attacking the Allied forces. He assumed they were looking for someone. The girl doesn't understand how they found out so early if she thought she had at least 2 months. She realized that the construction of the magic tower would take at least 2 months, which was not at all in line with the original. At first, she thought that all this massacre was carried out by Jael. Now she suspected that both Saladin and Luna might be involved. She suddenly finds herself thinking about the possibility that all her brothers and sisters are looking for her. The girl remembers how different they are from each other. She was always concerned about the meaning of their existence, but they simply lived, following their father's orders, and without asking unnecessary questions. It was Richie's experiment, which consisted only of obedience and submission. His children obeyed their father without question and lived as if they were one with him. Karina understood that this was why they hated her so much, because she killed him and ran away. This was especially true for Luna, who always blindly followed Richie. Due to her injuries, the girl was no longer as strong as before, so she planned to create more corpses to stall for time so that she could escape. She had another method for an emergency, but she didn't really want to resort to it. Karina planned to go somewhere far away today, since she had asked for time off from work for the next day. As she enters her home, a blade flies past her face and destroys a section of the wall behind her. The girl turns around and notices a completely healthy Renegar in front of her. He suddenly asks if she is a member of the Apocalypse family. Karina looks at him questioningly, not understanding how it came to this. The boy says that he, a knight of Latham, was not destined by fate to stand next to her under this sky. He says that he can't leave her alive. The girl looks at the hole in the wall and remembers that she cleaned it just recently, this morning. Renegar suddenly uses his sword and thrusts it straight into the floor. Karina asks herself if it would be easier to just kill him. She realizes she can't do it, no matter how much he irritates her. Long nails suddenly appear on the girl's hands, and she rushes at the attacker. She says she'd rather play with him before killing him. Karina explains that, as far as she knows, he is the youngest swordmaster, so perhaps his skill is as worthy as his illustrious name. She suddenly says that he is definitely not stronger than her, since Lathem's light is the exact opposite of Apocalypse's power. Renegar couldn't imagine that she could stop the blow of his sword. The girl asks if he really wanted to kill her. Suddenly, one of the dead men attacks him, and she tells him that he won't be able to defeat her, even if he has 100 lives left. Renegar suddenly stumbles and begins to wobble, but still remains on his feet. She wondered what condition his body was in if he was still holding on despite the number of wounds. She didn't understand what God wanted from Renegar if he was fighting so desperately. Suddenly, a blue glow begins to emanate from the guy, and the dead people fall to the floor. He says that if 100 lives are not enough for him, he will be reborn again. Karina notes that both Apocalypse and humans are equally reckless and cruel. The guy says he doesn't think he'll need that many lives. The girl suddenly uses magic, realizing that it clearly won't work out well with him. She says this will be the price for the upcoming repairs. Karina grabs him by the hair and says that she wants to make a remark. She tells him that he won't be able to defeat her, even if he is reborn 1,000 times. The girl looks into his face and suddenly blushes. She thought about how cute the guy was, even when he was about to cry. Unfortunately, being nice and not annoying her were two different things. Karina wonders how he was going to defeat her if he couldn't even touch Jael once. She understands that something is wrong with the guy. His eyes were like a deep sea. For some reason, there was a deep black darkness in this sea. Karina begins to examine the sword, finding it very strange. Renegar, as if under hypnosis, stares at the sword from which his energy slowly emanate. Suddenly, his mind clears, and his eyes return to the same color as before. The girl decides that the sword is trying to take possession of its owner. She didn't like this at all, because over time it could lead to worse consequences. She orders the dead to knock out the guy so he doesn't get in the way. Suddenly, Karina hears someone's voice and looks at the weapon in surprise. Sword asks how she dares to touch him with her dirty hands. The dead are almost finished cleaning up the sudden mess. Renegar lies in the same place, the bed, unconscious. He suddenly begins to frown, which Karina notices. She assumes that the guy is dreaming about something bad. She would be sorry if a man like him died. Chiron crawls up to her and asks her to kill the guy right now. The girl explains that the sleeping man is not to blame for what happened. She says that a nearby sword contributed to everything. Karina asks the indignant weapon to remain silent all this time, threatening to smear it with her blood. She reminds that if the blood of the Apocalypse touches even a little bit of holy power, then this power will begin to evaporate, which also applied to the sword. The weapon reminds her that his name is Latham, and then demands that she call him by his name. She asks him to shut up, threatening to really melt him. After this, she throws away the sword and looks at her palm. The blood on her hand took much longer to heal than usual. She realizes that she has truly become much weaker than before. Chiron suddenly notices that the sword smells as if it contains souls. Since the sea is the source of life, Latham infused life force into the weapon. This force was the unfortunate and unjustly lost souls. This has been going on for several thousand years. 3 years ago, a squad of Lathiem's men, heading somewhere, felt something strange. When this stopped, Renegar ordered everyone to remain in their fighting positions. He reminded that they don't know what might happen here and when. Someone said that he saw a girl who looked like a snake being wounded and grabbed by a bloody man. The guy asked him if he was sure they were here, to which he received confirmation. Suddenly, another soldier pointed to the sky and asked to look there. When Renegar looked up, he saw Karina flying above them. He froze, unable to tear his eyes away from her. The guy pulled his hand up, but something suddenly distracted him. He looked at the sword, which was then clearly expressing displeasure. When Renegar returned his gaze, he noticed that the girl was no longer there. He was weak, so he couldn't touch her. Chiron reports that the sword smells of unfortunate and unjustly lost souls. The sword asks what kind of injustice can be spoken of if people died in the name of the Lord. He says that all the dead became his tools, thanks to which he became stronger. Karina realizes that there was a reason why the owners of the Holy Sword had to die. She remembers that the owner of the weapon must change once every 10 years, and they all died in the war against the Apocalypse. The girl asks if it turns out that the sword was deliberately played so that its owners would die. When Latham hears this, he makes no sound, unwilling to respond. Karina notes that the sword turns out to be even worse than the Apocalypse. The girl had no idea about this, as it was not revealed in the novel, as it would not have affected the main plot anyway. She understands that the situation has become much more complicated. Karina wonders how long its current owner has left to live. The sword does not respond. and the girl takes it in her hands, causing it to begin to lose its power, and immediately agrees to tell. The weapon says that the guy should have died the time she saved him. The girl approaches the peacefully sleeping guy and sits down next to him. She was amused by the fact that he was sleeping so soundly, unaware of what was about to happen to him. She understands that death is his right destiny. Karina smiles, realizing that this situation is very much to her advantage. Late at night, Renegar finally opens his eyes, waking up. He recalls having a dream about the time when he first became the master of the Holy Sword and first encountered Apocalypse. The guy tries to remember what Karina told him then. The moment he realized it was a dream and he wouldn't be able to catch her, he woke up. In reality, he also could not see her anymore. He understood that members of the Apocalypse were hiding in different parts of the continent. Suddenly, Renegar notices that his hands are bound by someone's magic. He remembers being caught by the Apocalypse monster. The guy jumps out of bed, assuming he is in a laboratory. When he looks around the room, he realizes that this is a very ordinary house. Suddenly, a female voice comes from behind him. The girl noticed that he had finally woken up from his sleep. She sat in the back with a completely unperturbed face. Renegar understands that he will never be able to forget those eyes. When he looked into them, the ground seemed to disappear from under his feet, and before him opened a forest full of greenery and life, inside which an endless hell was hidden. The guy thoughtfully calls Karina by name, without looking away. She asks how he knows her name. Renegar assumes that he still hasn't woken up from his sleep. He asks how he cannot know her name. The girl remarks that she is apparently famous, since the owner of the Holy Sword himself calls her name. The boy finally remembers how the sword began to reach towards her as soon as he opened his eyes. As a result, Karina even managed to wound him. To his surprise, the guy still remained alive. He wonders why she didn't kill him. The girl, alert, asks what his name is. Renegar, noticing how she avoids the question, again asks why he is still alive. Karina points out that this is unfair, because he knows her name, but she doesn't know anything yet. The guy annoyedly shouts out her name, and she jokingly confirms that that is indeed her name. She, smiling, again asks Renegar to introduce himself. He suddenly comes close and tells her his name. The guy again asks what her goal is. Karina notices how gentle his voice is, something she never knew when she read the novel. She suggests that something similar is felt by people when revelation descends upon them. The girl suddenly pushes Renegar away from her. She asks if he is surprised that she is so strong. Karina reminds that she had previously warned him that he would not be able to defeat her. The boy's face turns red and he slowly looks away. She suddenly notices that his gaze today is very different from yesterday. The girl confirms the theory that Renegar was enchanted by the sword. She was sorry that such beautiful eyes, like the blue sea, were clouded over. She realizes that even she seems to have a little crush on him. Karina says that she is going to treat the guy and let him go after he gets back on his feet. He indignantly asks if she really thinks he will believe this. The girl says that this is exactly what she actually thought. Renegar advises that she should just kill him right away. He says that he has no need of his enemy's mercy at all. Suddenly, the guy grabs a sword and points it straight at Apocalypse. Karina takes his hand and asks if they should become allies then. She wonders what he doesn't like so much. The girl asks if he can't believe it, at least because she saved his life. She says he's already damn lucky. The guy reminds her that she is Apocalypse, his sworn enemy, so she better kill him here and now. He states that it is unacceptable for him to simply be in the same room with someone from the Apocalypse. Karina suddenly tells that 3 years ago, the Tower of Apocalypse fell. She remembers Richie asking her how the humans knew about their place. The girl answered him that it would be better not to engage in battle and to retreat. The man suggested that they split up, so as not to all run together. He ordered Jael to take his blood brothers and sisters and leave for the north. Saladin had to take the firemen and go west. The moon took the children of darkness and went to the east. Richie asked the rest to scatter to different temples. Karina told her father that she was going to stay with him. She said he couldn't handle it alone. The man planned to destroy all people and get to God himself in order to rule this world. The girl did not understand why he was so eager for world domination. It was unclear to her what Richie would gain from personally elevating himself to the position of God. The man asked if his daughter still had strength, to which she replied yes. Karina said that she could kill anyone. She didn't understand if there was anything in his goal that was worth losing more than he gained. The girl snapped her fingers, and in an instant, the entire army suddenly disappeared. Richie immediately realized that this was a hallucination she had created. He immediately began to cast magic, preparing to attack. Suddenly, a huge snake crushed him, not allowing him to move even a little. Karina asked if the man remembered what he said when she was younger. She reminded him that if he didn't want to die, he would have to kill himself. The girl told her father that this was precisely why she was committing this murder. After that, she said goodbye to the man, and he was gone. Karina tells the guy that she killed her father with her own hands. She reveals that she is no longer an apocalypse, having betrayed them. Reniger suddenly wonders if she looks at all people with such eyes. He doesn't understand why her gaze binds him like the thorny stems of a vine, preventing him from breathing deeply. Saladin looked at the members of the Church of the Seven Apostles with a grin. A bag full of gold coins suddenly fell between them. Karina said that people can take this and bury their friends with dignity. They thanked her and promised to gather even more followers. Saladin suddenly noticed that she was too soft with them. He asked her not to be like that, and then asked if she really felt sorry for those people. The girl responded with a negative and stepped forward. She suddenly spread her wings, preparing to fly. Karina said that she felt most sorry for them. There are countless corpses lying on the ground. Saladin uses magic on them and peers at them, trying to see something. He realizes with disappointment that there is nothing useful here. For 3 years after the fall of the Apocalypse Tower, the boy built up his strength to keep the promise he made to Karina. Then he told her that he would definitely come back when he grew up a little. He had finally completed his second period of maturation, and now he could hide his monster form, and he could also easily use the flames of the underworld. Saladin had long known that his sister was planning to leave the castle. He noticed how indifferent she was to everything that was happening, and sometimes it was clear from her face that she didn't really like all of this. That is why he even turned a blind eye to the fact that she had deliberately orchestrated their defeat in the Holy War, and was sure that no matter where she ran, he would definitely find her, even though he did not know her goals. To the guy's surprise, Karina eventually disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, he hears a familiar voice behind him. Jael wonders if his brother found anything. He notes that if he flies aimlessly like this, he will definitely not learn anything new. Saladin asks if he really thinks he would tell if he found anything. Jael suddenly says that in any place where there is a lot of small game, a predator is sure to appear. He notes that a snake could also be found in this same place. Saladin suddenly realizes something and quickly flies away, leaving his brother. One of the dead men carefully treats Renegar's wounds. The guy wonders where his sword is. Karina tells him that his thing is in a safe place, and he asks if there is anything like that in this house. This makes the girl a little angry, and she comes closer to the man. She wonders what he is so unhappy about. Karina reminds him that she brought him here to be cured, and promised to let him go after he recovered. She says that she will return the sword when the guy leaves. The girl says that nothing will happen to him as long as he sits quietly. She sarcastically asks if he wants her to act like Apocalypse, to which he responds with silence. Quran notes that men are always quite bold in words. Karina says that the snake is her friend, after which she names his name. She says that if the guy wants to walk, he will be able to meet some more animals, after which she asks him not to be afraid. The girl notes that he already knows the cat, since he tried to kill her. She says that she understands perfectly well that he did this under the control of the sword. In fact, Renegar only vaguely remembered what happened after he found himself here and took up arms. This was far from the first time this had happened. He remembers talking to the children and them thanking him for his help. Among them was a boy who was hiding behind everyone. When the child ran away in fear, the boy realized that he had no idea what had happened. He wondered what Karina would say if she knew about this. The girl suddenly asks Renegar not to think about what happened. She says it's not his fault at all. Karina says that in her opinion, the sword is a real bastard. She says that if the guy gives in to his will like that, he could get hurt, so he should be more careful. The guy asks how the sword can harm him. Karina wonders why he is asking her if he considers her his sworn enemy. She says that she destroyed the Apocalypse Tower only for the sake of freedom and simply lives here, without bothering anyone. Renegar understands that she is not going to answer his question. He says he can't trust her, because she's a monster who killed hundreds of people right before his eyes. The guy wonders who will be held responsible for their deaths. Karina says that she killed only to survive. She asks who will be responsible for her life, if killing for the sake of survival can be called a crime. The girl reminds that she didn't ask him to believe her. She says that there is nothing worthwhile in trust, and what was said only in words has even less meaning. Karina asks him to focus only on getting better. She says that after this, she will let him go, and in her opinion, that is when he will be able to trust her. Renegar recalls the girl's words that it was not his fault. He realized that he couldn't fall asleep to the sound of a snake's hissing, but it was too late. In the bright moonlight, a couple of people are wandering down the street. Penelope carefully examines every corner she passes. She again wonders where Renegar has disappeared to. Dawn is the boundary between morning and night, and the border between yesterday and today. For Karina, he was the gateway between life and death. The girl hopes that while she is gone, the guy will not run away. She cast a spell on the house, and she doubted that such a weakened knight would be able to do anything. Karina remembers Renegar's words about her being a monster who killed hundreds of people right before his eyes. She understands that it would be ridiculous to ask for leniency for killing her own allies. But she didn't need his pity. She didn't care, because the guy didn't have much time left anyway. The girl knew very well that if he continued to use the sword, he would definitely die. She assumes that it will last for at most 2 more times. Karina just had to make sure that he didn't die next to her. As in the novel, he must die at the hands of jail. And only then will all the hatred and revenge of the main character be directed towards him. The story stated that Renegar was supposed to die in a place where people lived and which jail was going to attack. So Karina would kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and Apocalypse would ultimately be destroyed, as stated in the novel. She suddenly notices a hellish white flame nearby. The girl was completely sure that this was the work of Saladin. She is very surprised that her brother has become so strong. Suddenly, she notices Penelope nearby. The main character had a fight with her companion. Karina focuses her attention on the girl's rings and brooches. The guy asks where Penelope is going. She, addressing him by the name of Ahin, asks him to let her go. There was no doubt, in front of Karina was definitely the main character of the novel. Apocalypta is very surprised that such a dangerous aura is emanating from her, although she has not even awakened yet. Karina was afraid of the girl and definitely didn't want to catch her eye. Penelope angrily asks the guy to stop, but he says that Renegar definitely can't be here. Ahin was the one who made a contract with the Wind Spirit King Sylphid. According to the novel's plot, he ruled the Dafin family until the main character awakened. He was also one of the 4 men in Penelope's life. The guy always said that he did everything for her, but at the same time, he watched her every step and wanted to make her obey him in everything. Even now, in Karina's opinion, he behaved quite terribly. She suddenly realizes that it is not far from here to the Kuhiran temple, where she found Renegar. Penelope assumes that the Lost One survived and came to the Gambit clan for help, and there is definitely a possibility of this. Akin says that this cannot be, and it is impossible. The girl again says that they don't know for sure. He asks her to come to her senses and repeats that Renegar is dead. Karina, watching what is happening from the sidelines, notices that the guy is still alive. The main character reports that there are no traces left and the body was not found. Akin reminds that if the blood of the Apocalypse comes into contact with a person from Latham, their body will melt, something she herself has seen more than once. The girl says that he is not like everyone else, and even if others die like that, it is not him. He suddenly shouts at her to stop harboring false hopes. The guy reports that Renegar is dead, and he was melted so much that they couldn't even find his bones. Karina notes to herself that he is right, because among the 3 main clans, Latham was the most vulnerable to Apocalypta because he used holy power. Their bodies did indeed melt as soon as they touched the blood of one of the Apocalypse, but it also worked the other way around. The novel even included a scene where Latham's men, forced to defend themselves with their last strength, committed suicide and spilled their blood on their enemy. This scene seemed terrifying to Karina, but in the end, she did the same thing when she threatened to melt Lathium's sword. Penelope asks what she will have left if she admits this. She wonders how Akin could know that Renegar was even there if his body was never found. The guy reminds her that he can see the memories of the dead, and the main character asks why he continues to sit still. She says she is sure he is still alive, because his body has not been found yet. The girl reports that Renegar is still alive, even if there is not a single trace by which he can be found. Karina understands that Penelope says this because of the past, and because of the person she once knew. She notes that no matter how hard she tries, she still won't find him. The main character says that she wants to find at least the slightest trace. Ahin tells her that he understands how she feels, but Apocalypta still continues to kill their people. He says they need to deal with them quickly before they suffer major losses. The guy notes that Renegar would like this too. Penelope suddenly says angrily that Akin has no right to say anything for him. She reports that she knows that it was he who sent Renegar to Kuhiran. In the novel, this was the very reason why the girl was never able to reciprocate Ahin's feelings. The more Penelope distanced herself, the more the guy became fixated on her. The main character suddenly tells her companion that she hates him. She pauses briefly and adds that now it seems she should listen to him. The girl finally admits that Ahin is right. Meanwhile, Renegar runs as fast as he can, holding his sword in his hands. Karina, walking through the Kambit clan tower, notes that there should be a whole bunch of high-class magicians here. For her, they would make wonderful zombies. The girl didn't understand how it was possible to kill such high-ranking magicians in one go. She realizes that Saladin has become much stronger than she thought. Karina consoles herself with the fact that the guy would not attack her. She was in quite a good mood today. This was due to the fact that there had been no incidents since the morning. The exception were people she had seen not long ago. She suggests that Penelope, having accepted Renegar's death, finally received the power of a goddess and became the head of the Dafin clan. Later, she was supposed to begin uniting troops to fight Apocalypse. The first person Penelope will fight will be Luna, who loves her father more than anything in the world and hates Karina more than anything. In the novel, she was strong, but not strong enough to withstand the attacks of the Allied forces, and eventually died on the battlefield. And after that, Apocalypse and the troops entered into a small truce. Of course, this didn't last long enough. Karina found it strange that her mood improved while she was thinking about the events in the novel. She believed that Apocalypse was hopelessly moving towards its destruction, and that she simply needed to exist quietly until that moment arrived. The girl really hoped that the people would ultimately win. Karina suddenly notices that a gap has formed in the barrier she created. She didn't care about the man's escape. She was much more interested in the snake's condition. She didn't understand how Renegar managed to recover his strength so quickly. The girl realizes that Chiron would not have been able to resist him without her. The snake was like a parent to her, and the best friend who had been with her since early childhood. She was very afraid that something had happened to Chiron. Karina goes up to the second floor and quickly rips the blanket off the bed. She suddenly notices a snake sleeping peacefully on the bed. The girl grabs Chiron and starts shaking him from side to side, trying to wake him up. He notes that she arrived quite early, and Karina says that the next day has already arrived. Chiron says that Renegar continued to sleep, but he got hungry and ate the monster. Suddenly, the snake stops his story and realizes something. He suddenly says that it looks like the man has given him a sleeping pill. The girl quickly gets ready and leaves the house. She decides that she needs to find the escapee. Renegar, without slowing down, runs in an unknown direction. He suddenly remembers how the sword woke him up a couple of hours ago. The guy waited until the snake fell asleep and headed towards the weapon. He walked hesitantly towards the sword, waiting for him in the corner of the room. Renegar asks if he is okay. Sword reports that Karina tormented him a lot. He wonders what they were talking about. The guy immediately remembers the girl's words, that if he gives in to the will of the weapon like that, he could get hurt. He reports that they did not discuss anything important. The sword says that they need to get out of here as soon as possible. Renegar suddenly remarks that they can wait a little longer. He says that Apocalypse most likely wants to use him, which is why she didn't kill him. The guy says that he only needs to heal until he can attack her. Sword asks how he can receive help from the enemy, being a servant of God. He wonders if she has bewitched him in any way. The weapon tells him that he is not worthy of being its owner. Renegar says that he had no intention of accepting help, but only wanted to wait a little. The sword suddenly orders him to take him away from here immediately. The boy remembers how passers-by called him the master of the holy sword. He understands that everything is completely different, and it was the sword that became his master. Renegar hears a voice telling him to run even faster. He suddenly notices someone's red eyes in the cave opposite him. The guy smells blood and assumes that it is coming from him. Suddenly, the voice of the sword warns him of danger, asking him to turn around. A group of monsters attacks Renegar from behind. He quickly repels the attack of one of them. The guy realizes that there is a flock of griffins in front of him. He feels relieved when he realizes there are only 4 of them. Renegade uses the sword's power and is completely under its influence. A familiar voice commands him to deal with his enemies as quickly as possible. After a couple of seconds, one of the monsters is dead. Suddenly, another griffin attacks him from the side and wounds him in the shoulder. The guy lets go of the sword, but immediately picks it up. He turns around to see a monster looming over him, preparing to attack. Renegar prepares to fight back, when he suddenly notices that his sword is no longer glowing. He asks the weapon to give him power, but receives no response. The guy assumes that the connection was interrupted, but almost immediately realizes that this cannot be true. He is suddenly attacked by a griffin, causing him to fly back. He still can't understand why it happened, that his strength suddenly ran out. Without losing hope, he asks the sword if it is alive, but again receives no answer. Renegar notes to himself that if he had known that this would happen, he would not have run away. He catches himself thinking that it would be better to be killed by Apocalypta than by these monsters. The guy thinks that he would like to hear Karina's words again, that she will save him. He opens his eyes and suddenly notices that the monster in front of him has turned to stone. A voice nearby asks what he should do with the guy. The girl, heading towards Renegar, with just one snap of her fingers, deprives all the other griffins of life. She wonders what she needs to do to make him finally hear her. Karina says he can't die here. It all had to do with the fact that in the novel, he was supposed to be killed by jail. The guy asks if she is lying, and she asks what she said that seems like a lie to him. He says that he feels like she left him alive because she wants to use him for her own purposes. Renegar suggests that she needs him to be alive because only then will her plan come to fruition. He says he can't believe her, then reminds her of her words about how words have no value. The guy says that he will believe her only if she proves it with more than just words. He suddenly offers her to enter into a blood contract. It was a spell designed for use on the battlefield when fighting alongside someone you don't trust. The death of someone connected to you means your death, which also works vice versa. This spell binds the blood of two contractors and puts their lives on the line. Since people still needed to trust each other, only the three great clans used this spell, so Karina didn't think he would want to put his life on the line with someone like her. She reminds him that he might die, and Renegar says that he would have died anyway if she hadn't come. He suddenly remarks that he wouldn't mind dying from her blood. Karina says that he apparently didn't think that she could refuse, but the guy says that in that case, he will die here and now. He says that he can commit suicide despite the fact that it is a sin, because now he has no choice. The girl didn't want him to die, but she was sure that if she made a contract with him, he would definitely force her to be good. Renegar says his only condition is that she deliver him safely to Lathium's temple. She understands that if something goes wrong and the guy dies, she will still become the main character's target. Karina decides to take him to the temple and then arrange things so that Jail attacks him. Suddenly, she pulls Renegar towards her and kisses him. When the guy asks her what she's doing, she asks if it was better that way. The girl says that she does not want to give her blood to sign some kind of contract. She says that even if they are not completely connected, that will be enough. Renegar doesn't let her finish and suddenly interrupts her with another kiss. After this, the guy steps away and smiles contentedly. He reports that he also likes this method better. Suddenly, Karina grabs him by the neck and looks at him threateningly. She says that if he dares to touch her again without permission, she will not be so sweet anymore. The guy says that he just held her back because he thought that she wouldn't wait until the contract was fully concluded and would leave. He reminds that he is putting his life on the line. The girl doesn't understand how she's supposed to believe this after such a passionate kiss. He says that she won't be able to kill him anyway. Renegar reminds her that if he dies, the same will happen to her. She suddenly kicks the man standing opposite her in the stomach. Karina asks if she can at least beat him, since this happened. He replies that she can beat him as much as she wants. The guy says that the most important thing to him is the fact that he will not die. He reminds that she linked her life with his and vice versa. It was very different from the sword contract. Since they had made a blood contract, they would not harm each other. Karina says that if she can't kill him now, it doesn't mean she can't later. She says that he would do well not to irritate her. The guy suddenly falls silent and becomes immersed in his thoughts. He remembers the moment when he saw Karina for the very first time. Renegar says that he would rather die by her hand than by the clutches of a griffin. He suddenly smiles and thanks the girl for saving him. Karina recalls that the person standing opposite is called the descendant of the god of the seas. She asks herself if that is why his eyes seem to resemble the sea, why she so wants to look into them. Suddenly, Renegar falls down exhausted. The girl decides that he has died and understands that her life is about to end. Suddenly, Karan announces that it was he who put the man to sleep. He says he had to pay for drugging the snake. After a while, they find themselves at home, and the guy is lying peacefully in bed. Karina, sitting nearby, is worried that this will somehow affect the plot. She decides that she shouldn't worry too much because everything is fine now. The girl understands that, even though Renegar is alive now, this will not last long. There was no change in her plan to lure and kill Jael. Karina turns to the holy sword, but does not receive any response. She suddenly says that if he continues to ignore her, she will break him. The girl asks if he knew that Renegar would offer her a blood contract. The weapon begins to rebel, and she asks what wrong she did. She says that if the sword had not woken the guy up, then none of this would have happened. Karina asks if he thought she would sit idly by. The weapon wonders why he needs to listen to her at all if he was created by the god of the seas himself. She asks if this means that the sword, created by the god of the seas himself, makes a person its master and then kills him. Latham ignores the question, not knowing how to answer it. Karina notes that she feels like Renegar was asking him for strength at that moment. She says that the sword did not listen to him and wanted the boy to die at the hands of the griffin in order to absorb the holy power remaining in him. The girls are surprised how people can praise such an item. She turns around and looks at Renegar, who is sleeping peacefully. Karina remembers his words that it would be nice to die from her blood. She wonders if he understands that she will control the power of her blood and is unlikely to allow such a thing. Mentally turning to the sword, she notices that its owner does not know something. She looks thoughtfully at her dirty hands, creating a small pause. The girl understands that the guy doesn't know how much the contract with Apocalypta can poison his body. Jael walks slowly through the now familiar place. He promised himself that one day he would destroy it with his own hands. The guy uses his magic, preparing to carry out his plan. He suddenly remembers Karina's attitude towards him. The girl was always cold and distant from him. She beat him to it the last time when she killed their father. It was always like that, but this time, Jael planned to be ahead. He did all this to get her. The boy understands that it is time to call his relatives. Renegar suddenly sees again the moment of his fall from the cliff. He asks himself why he was afraid then. He was told that death is the moment when you are closest to God. The boy lived his whole life as the master of the holy sword. Since this is what he was always told about death, he thought that he would not be afraid to die. In fact, Renegar wanted to live. He was happy that he managed to survive several battles. The guy regretted it and asked God for forgiveness. He swore that he would no longer be afraid to approach God, that he would no longer cling to life. Karina, when he wakes up, asks him how he feels. She shows the mark on her hand and says that it is about the contract that he, being a native of Latham, made with Apocalypta. Renegar is surprised that he didn't dream all of this. He says that he will definitely not regret it and will not ask to terminate the contract, because they are related by blood. The girl suddenly notices that he doesn't seem to be aware of how poisonous a blood contract with a half-human can be. He notices how pleasant her scent is and suddenly throws her onto the bed. After a minute, he realizes he's doing something strange and pulls away. Karina pulls him towards her and says that it seems like she desires him very much. He realizes how wrong it is for him to get involved with Apocalypse while being a knight of Latham. The girl says that he should answer for what he did. She says that now they have experienced passion for each other. Karina notes that there is no way back for them. Renegar asks God for forgiveness for what is to come. Despite his doubts, he suddenly approaches and kisses the girl. She bites his lip, causing tiny trickles of blood to run down their faces. Suddenly, a strange hand appears in front of the guy's face, blocking the way. She stands up and says that they should end it here. Renegar understands that it only seemed to him that she was thinking the same thing, and she was only making fun of him. The girl says that this is enough for their contract. She explains that this magic is used to strengthen trust between the three great clans, binding souls and forcing obedience. Karina reports that this contract is realized when two similar species swear to it. The contract with the demi-humans was different, because the color of these two souls is different. The soul always strives to return to its original color. She says that this is why they need to mix their blood before their souls find that path. Karina reports that if this does not happen before the contract expires, they will disappear. Renegar breathes a sigh of relief and realizes that she wasn't mocking him after all. The girl says that they need to drink each other's blood every day. He looks at her puzzled, and she suddenly smiles. She notes that this apparently wasn't enough for him. Renegar's face flushes, and he realizes that it was all a joke after all. Karina realizes that he didn't seem to like her joke. She believed that she had long since grown up to fall in love. The girl explains that there is another way, which is to simply cut your wrist and let the blood out, but then adds that she doesn't really like that. He asks with interest what she is talking about, and Karina explains that she is talking about mixing blood. She concludes by saying that a kiss is the best option. Renegar realizes that the imaginary passion he felt was only his. He asks what she means when she says they have experienced passion for each other. Karina says that the longer they delay mixing blood, the further their souls become from their bodies. She says that this is precisely why, if this is not done, they will behave like animals and satisfy their animal instincts. The guy blushes and asks what she means. She says that in this case, one of them will absorb the other's abilities. Karina wonders why he has such scared eyes. She asks if he really thought it was possible to seal two species with a magical contract without consequences. The girl, smirking, suggests that he was thinking about something else. She says that he will die anyway. Karina explains that since she is stronger, absorbing his abilities will not be difficult. The girl notes that if he doesn't want to lose his holy power, then it's better for him not to touch her again. A smile suddenly appears on Renegar's face and he chuckles. She wonders if he's laughing at the fool he made of himself when he offered her this contract. Karina suddenly asks if it could be because he remembered how, as a noble holy knight, he attacked her. The guy gets out of bed and says he would like to repeat something. He says that no matter how much they scare him, he will not break this contract. Karina wonders what will happen to him if they find out in Latham that he made a deal with her and even kissed her. He replies that he chose this path to survive, so God will forgive him for it. The girl asks if he can forgive him for the fact that Renegar is literally enjoying what is happening. He smiles mysteriously and goes back to the bed. The guy wonders if it's more important that he just gets back to Latham safely. He says that for some reason, it seems to him that everything will be fine. He no longer cared that the girl was making fun of him or telling him not to touch her. This forbidden fruit in the form of Apocalypse was too sweet for him. Luna, sitting under the moonlight, hums a melody under her breath. Suddenly, one of her griffins flies up to her. He immediately tries to explain something to her with concern. The monster reports that everyone turned to stone, and no one survived except him. The girl starts laughing at the fact that Karina made such a mistake. Although she presented herself as very smart, she knew perfectly well that she was the only being in this world who could turn her children into stone. Luna uses magic in an attempt to find out where her sister is hiding. She sees before her the place where the stone remains of her griffins lie. At that very second, the girl jumps onto her recently arrived pet. She heads to Kuhiran, where, as it turns out, Karina has been hiding all this time. Seal asks in surprise if his friend wants to quit. He asks if something serious happened to her that caused such a decision. The girl says that she simply decided to move. She explains this by saying that Apocalypta is very close, and she doesn't want to be near them. This was true, although not in detail. Karina understood that if she took Renegar to Latham, she would die for a while. She had no other choice to avoid the attack of Latham and Apocalypta. She ignores almost every word her colleague says, noting how annoying it is. The girl understands that she has no choice, since she is bound by a contract. She realizes that Renegar turned out to be much smarter than she thought. And surprisingly, she even liked their kiss. The girl decides that this ill-mannered puppy definitely needs to be punished for disobedience. She remembers that he will have to die anyway. Suddenly, Ciel grabs her interlocutor by the shoulders and asks where she is going to go. Karina looks at him in surprise and says that she doesn't know that yet. The man glances at her neck and suddenly notices a small bruise there. He asks if the girl lives alone, to which he receives a positive answer. When Karina returns home, she immediately asks Kiran to check the barrier from the outside. Suddenly, she notices something strange. Renegar stood before her in an apron with a pot of food in his hands. She sees a lot of different dishes on the table and asks what he is doing. The guy says that he is hungry, and so he decided to cook something. Karina begins to look around fearfully, looking for Kiran. She notices her friend curled up in a ball not far from her. The girl points out that he is a snake, not a pig, and Kiran says that they have an excellent cook. Karina reports that they both may not eat regular food. The guy says that he noticed this back when, during the war, the members of the Apocalypse never ate a meal. She indignantly notes that they feed on monsters instead. Renegar smiles and says that he knows perfectly well that she is not like that. He asks her to try it, because one can eat not only out of necessity, but also to have a good time. Karina is surprised that the guy looked like a walking corpse just yesterday and is already so cheerful. She recalls his words that if vital organs are not damaged, recovery will be quick. The girl says there is no point in him putting poison in her food, and he reminds her that they are bound by a contract, so he would have died too. She suspiciously scoops up a spoon and tries one of the dishes. Karina remarks that this is quite good, when suddenly she announces that she needs to leave. The guy decides she doesn't like it, but she explains that she needs to change the bandage. The girl removes the cloth from her neck, and that small bruise suddenly becomes part of a huge wound. Reniger is very surprised by what he sees, and she asks him if he thought that she wears the bandage only for decoration. He, very embarrassed, admits that it looked so elegant that he mistook it for jewelry. The guy asks how she managed to get hurt. Karina, smiling, says that it is her father's fault. She reports that he was not very attentive, which is why he eventually died. Only now does Renegar fully realize that she actually killed the leader of the apocalypse. He asks if he can treat her. Karina asks him to focus on his own recovery, because they are leaving tomorrow. The guy asks if she will return the sword to him, to which she does not receive a clear answer. He suddenly says that he would like to ask something. Reniger wonders what her phrase about the closer he is to the holy sword, the more dangerous it is for him means. She asks why he asks this question if he doesn't trust her. The guy says that now he thinks she's not lying. Karina begins by saying that the owner of the holy sword usually changes every 10 years. She wonders if he has ever seen the corpse of the previous owner. The girl says that the holy sword has absorbed the life force of its owner. She reports that this is where he got his power from. Karina explains that all previous owners were eaten by this sword. She adds that he too will eventually die soon. The girl realizes how pleasant it is to plunge such a seemingly unshakable night into horror. The feeling of pleasure was like dropping a drop of ink into crystal clear water. She realizes that she absolutely loves it. Renegar reports that her words contradict what they are taught in Latham. The girl says that his sword did not give him strength in the battle with the griffins, because it wanted him dead. She says that after this, the weapon was going to take away his remaining strength. The guy incredulously asks the reason for the sword's behavior. Karina is amused that he asks such a question, being a believer. He asks why a weapon would want to devour a person's life force if it had other ways to gain energy. The fact that the holy sword brings its owner to death and then devours his life force to the last drop was not mentioned even in the novel. The girl couldn't understand why they didn't mention such an important detail. She reports that she herself only found out about this after she interacted with the weapon. Karina shares her guess that a person's life force is more powerful than anything else. She says that this is precisely the reason why Apocalypse collects human lives. The girl shares that if he has 1,000 human lives, he will be able to create one like her. Renegar suddenly angrily slams his fist on the table. He asks if this means that, in order to take revenge, Apocalypta gathered the disciples in order to then steal their souls. The girl says that, on the contrary, they kill bad people who only do what they can to ruin this world. The person sitting opposite says that only God has the right to decide what is good and what is not. He says that she will answer to him for all her sins, so there is no point even in repentance. The guy claims that if a person is bad, it doesn't mean that she can take his life. Karina agreed with him, although she didn't say it out loud. He says that in any case, after the death of all these people, something bad awaits her. The girl wonders why Latham's people killed their warriors then. He replies that one cannot worship evil spirits that have rejected God, and that is exactly what the members of the Apocalypse did. Karina asks herself what she could say to finally shake this knight's faith. She asks again if they kill those who do not profess their faith, given that they are taught that murder is unacceptable. The girl wonders if this is too contradictory. Renegar bites his lip in irritation, searching for the right words. He says that people who have entered the apocalypse have renounced their human nature, so their death is not terrible. Karina asks, what about Latham punishing and executing those who want to accept the faith of the Daephin or Cambit clans, accusing them of treason? She reminds them that they worship the same god. Besides this, they also often fought together in wars. The girl notes that his holy sword is exactly the same, because, like a vampire, it clung to its owner and sucked out his life force until he died. She says that if killing thousands of masters in this manner is the will of their god, then she has nothing to say. Renegar, looking gloomy, gets up from the table. He asks why she wants to make him doubt the teachings of his people. The girl reminds that he himself decided to trust her words. The boy decides that he succumbed to temptation only because it was the speech of a member of the devilish Apocalypse clan. He thinks that this will not be enough to convince him. Renegar asks her to be sure to take care of her neck, realizing how kind she is to him. After this, he leaves the room sadly. Karina, looking after him, smiles contentedly. At night, already lying in bed, the guy thinks about his situation. He was not born of any people. They told him that he simply appeared at some point, as if they had discovered the son of the god of the seas himself. When he began to take his first steps, he himself approached the holy sword. The baby accidentally dropped the weapon and then fell with all his weight on the protruding blade, but was not injured. This is how he became the master of the holy sword. Renegar was the son of the god of the seas and the owner of a legendary weapon. At the same time, Karina saved him and even signed a contract with him. The guy couldn't figure out whose side was actually right. He wraps himself in a blanket and understands that he has no right to think this way, that he should not doubt God. Apocalypta quietly enters his room and, watching him sleep, realizes that this is much more interesting than she thought. The guy accidentally woke up before morning. He was very uneasy about his last conversation with Karina. He decides to talk and resolve everything to the end. Chiron, who had been awake all this time, reports that the girl has left. When asked about the time of her return, the snake says that she will come before morning. Chiron suddenly asks angrily why he is staring at him like that, threatening to swallow the guy. Renegar apologizes and says he didn't mean to be intimidating. The snake asks if he wanted to know something. The guy asks what kind of relationship he has with Karina, addressing the animal as master. Chiron, delighted by this address, immediately jumps up. He says that he is smart enough for Latham, after which he promises to tell everything. The snake begins by saying that this body belongs to a 1,000-year-old ancient monster that was awakened by Karina. He says that his usual name is Basilisk. The guy, having learned that he is an ancient creature, notes that they ruled this world before God came here. He says that he knows that the ancient monsters were destroyed so that humanity could exist. Renegar asks in surprise why the snake is so small. Chiron says that he made himself smaller on purpose, because if he had maintained his normal size, he wouldn't have had enough to feed even one person for lunch. He says that they were indeed destroyed at some point. The snake explains that besides him, there is not a single ancient monster left in this world. He also reports that he once angered the goddess of war, for which she placed a seal on him. The boy is surprised that he grew up in a temple, but this is the first time he heard about it. Chiron notes that this will probably be a long conversation. Karina walks through the territory of the Dyphon clan, through the spirit forest. Now this place did not belong to them, because dark corpses were lying on the ground. Only one member of the Apocalypse family plunged even his corpse into darkness when killed. This being was the moon. In the original story, she was also strangely possessed by the spirits of Dyphon. Being a spawn of darkness, she felt hatred towards those who live by the light. The girl decides that she shouldn't worry then, because in that case, the main character, Penelope Daphne, will kill Luna with particular cruelty. Karina whispers a few words and uses her magic. All the corpses suddenly move and are enclosed in a green ball. After a couple of seconds, limbs start to emerge from there one by one, and then the entire creatures themselves. The girl is surprised that perfume can also be turned into a zombie. She takes a closer look and notices that they belong to the element of water. Karina was happy to learn about her new abilities, but the water spirits were completely useless to her. Suddenly, she feels a piercing pain from the wound on her neck. The girl doesn't understand why it's so hard for her if she used a little force. She realizes that she has truly become weaker. Karina remembers that the people of Latham have incredible healing powers that should help her greatly. Unfortunately, she didn't want to ask Renegar for help at all. She was afraid that she herself would become so friendly and merciful if she looked into his eyes continuously. She decides to return to her human nature again. In fact, she was quite content living in the body of a monster and making fun of people like her new neighbor. The girl notes that if he does renounce his god, things will become even more interesting. Suddenly, she hears strange sounds nearby. Karina turns around in fear and sees a creature nearby. It was a griffin, heading straight for her. She uses her power and turns the monster into stone in a matter of seconds. She is surprised that her sister's servants are still here. The girl decides that she needs to return as soon as possible. Suddenly, she notices a note tied with a ribbon in the paws of a dead griffin. The paper stated that they had not seen each other for quite some time. Karina immediately realizes that this is Luna's handwriting. She realizes with concern that her sister is somewhere nearby now. Even before the appearance of people, there were both gods and ancient monsters. Many gods lived here, but in those days they were called demigods. Like humans, they were exceptionally remarkable creatures. Among them was the mighty seaman, who won the hearts of many. He gave his own by loving the one he was completely unable to love. His beloved was his opposite, a gorgon. At that time, ancient monsters confronted the gods. Initially, the Gorgon rejected the god of the seas, who was head over heels in love with her. God was so persistent that she eventually reciprocated his feelings. However, there was also one who was not at all satisfied with this outcome. She was the mistress of the temple, in which they swore eternal love to each other, the goddess of war. Even though she was angry, she could not harm a god like herself. That's why she decided to harm his Gorgon. This ancient monster was called Medusa. Quran explains that she was used to create Karina, and the guy notes that the scriptures didn't say anything about it at all. The snake explains that history is always written from the point of view of its author. It reminds me of the boy's question about why the god of the seas uses the power of human life. Quran says that he is simply weak. The girl who became a monster could not bear this misfortune and eventually committed suicide, and God could not save her, even after following her to another world. That's why he offered the goddess of war a deal. The god of the seas was ready to give all his power to the goddess. In exchange, she had to return his dead lover to him. Renegar asks if the deal is still in effect, and the serpent says that's why the sea god is weak. He explains that this is the reason why the precious children of the sea god are forced to give up their lives like this. The guy is surprised that people must give their lives for the sake of their god's beloved. He remembers that he was taught not to open his soul to evil spirits, but their god himself gave his heart to another species. Renegar did not understand why his people were dying then. He asks if Medusa is still alive, but receives a negative answer. Quran says that since the goddess of war cannot control life, she was unable to revive the Gorgon. The boy asks if she took the powers of the sea god, and the snake says that she lied. The goddess of war tricked him into her trap, then took his powers and escaped. Because of this, the god of the seas hid in the deep sea and has not shown himself until now. Renegar first looks at the floor in shock and then jumps up from the sofa. He indignantly asks how the goddess herself could dare to lie. The serpent asks if he has forgotten that man is an exact likeness of God. He says that if a person can lie, then the venerable gods can do it too. Quran asks what their religion is. The guy says he can't believe it. When the snake asks for a more specific answer, he replies that he does not believe a single word he heard. He did not believe in stories that were not written in the scriptures, that the holy sword was a devourer of lives, that love was the cause of everything, and that the goddess of war was deceiving him. The snake wonders if it could be that he simply doesn't want it. He says that people usually believe in what suits them and don't even pay attention to the rest. Chiron points out that he doesn't have to be believed, since he just told what he wanted to tell. He reports that the guy seems unable to avoid becoming attached to Karina. Interrupting the surprised Renegar, he reminds him that he is a descendant of the god of the seas. The serpent says that he will eventually have to open his heart to Apocalypse, who is the descendant of the woman he loved. The guy understood perfectly well that he couldn't do that. His soul, however, told him the exact opposite. He recalls Chiron's words that history is written from the point of view of its author. Renegar understands that each of them will remember this conversation in their own way. He is surprised to admit this, after which he assumes that he simply fell for the snake's tricks. The guy decides to find out everything himself immediately upon returning to Latham. Suddenly, a very loud knock is heard from behind the door, and the snake notes that if it were Karina, she would have simply opened the door. Renegar decides to approach the door and hesitantly tugs on the handle. Apocalypse strives for home, realizing that she needs to return as quickly as possible. She was sure that Luna was going to kill her, but she was too lazy to fight her. In any case, and without Karen's intervention, the girl would have died at the hands of the main character. She decides that they all need to pack up and leave together. Suddenly, she finds herself thinking about something they could do together that wasn't like her. At the hospital, Karina was always indifferent to everyone, but, as it seemed to Ciel, she was very soft towards him. He was sure that everything was mutual between them, but for some reason, the girl decided to leave. The guy decided that she just wanted him to stop her, so he came to his lover's house. Renegar notices an unfamiliar man in front of him when he opens the door. The first thing he sees is a bouquet of flowers behind the stranger's back. He asks about the identity of the newcomer, and the newcomer asks if Rena is home. Renegar stares at the floor, completely unable to understand why the stranger is addressing his partner in this way. He says that if a man has any business with her, he can convey it to her. Ciel asks if he can come in and wait until she returns. The guy blocks his way, preventing him from entering the house. He says he doesn't know the man, so he can't just let him in. The man who came says that he needs to talk to the girl in person, so he will wait. Seal assumes that this is the same person who left that mark on Karina's neck. He didn't understand how he was any worse than this guy. The man says that he is the head of the hospital where the girl works. He suddenly notices a surprised face standing opposite him. Renegar had not previously known that Karina worked anywhere, and even more so, he had not heard of this person. He understands that this is none of his business, and he cannot interfere in it in any way. The guy invites Ciel inside the house. Chiron, seeing this, immediately goes up to the second floor to remain unnoticed. Renegar says that Karina has been helping him for some time now. He suddenly notices that some kind of ominous energy is emanating from the person sitting next to him. The guy asks how long they have been working together. He says that he doesn't know the girl at all outside of this house, and today is the first time he heard about working at the hospital. Seal, upon learning that he knows nothing about Karin, decides that he definitely cannot compare to him. He says mockingly that they have known each other for just over a year. Renegar is very surprised that a member of the Apocalypse was able to work in the hospital for so long. The guest tells how the girl saved the chairman's son, who fainted from sunstroke, and he fell in love with her kindness. He says that he brought a bouquet for Karina and decided to tell her about his feelings before she left. The guy mentally notes that these flowers look very much like the girl. He is amazed that something similar is possible in her life. Since Karina is no longer a member of the Apocalypse, she can integrate into the lives of ordinary people and move on with her life, and then meet a man and marry him. Renegar did not at all understand why such a thought was so unpleasant to him. Seal notices that the girl is very late. He says mockingly that she is usually never late. The guy was comforted by the fact that he could touch Karina's lips every day, which allowed them to be closer than anyone else now. Despite this, he understood that he occupied this position solely because of the contract. Suddenly, a loud roar comes from above, and Renegar realizes that it was Chiron. Seal jumps up and asks if Karina was there the whole time. He runs ahead, announcing that he must go and check. The guy tells him he can't go there, and the man playfully asks why. Renegar realizes that if he sees the snake, it might reveal that Karina is a member of the Apocalypse. He says the second floor is her personal space. The man, smiling, says that then he can definitely go up there. Seal says that his interlocutor is only someone whom Karina is temporarily helping, but he has a much more serious relationship with her. He says that the guy has no right to stop him. The guest pulls his hand out of the other person's palm and suddenly stumbles. Renegar immediately reaches out to him and shouts to be careful. He reaches out to catch Ciel, but for some reason he hesitates. A moment later, the man is already lying dead at the very bottom of the stairs. The boy couldn't understand what his action meant. He recalls his question about why people should sacrifice their lives for the sake of God's beloved. Renegar looks at his trembling hands and asks himself why he froze. Chiron climbs up his leg and whispers that he should not be afraid. He ominously says that the love of the sea god also began in a similar way. Karina is surprised that it has already begun to get light, although she left the house when it was not that late. She decides that this is because she encountered griffins along the way. The girl realizes that 3 whole years have passed since she left the tower. It was unclear to her what kind of battles there could be when she had already become accustomed to this quiet life. She decides to get some sleep first and then get ready to leave. When Karina enters her home, the first thing she notices is a gloomy guy in the hallway. Renegar looks up at the newcomer and notices that she has returned. Suddenly, the girl smells the smell of human blood spreading throughout the house. He grabs her by the shoulders and confesses that he committed the crime. Karina is surprised and decides that the guy killed someone while she was away. He takes her by the hand and leads her to Ciel's corpse. The girl asks how it happened that he lies dead in this very place. Renegar says the man wanted to go up to her room. He suddenly clenches his fist and says it was an accident. The guy says he wanted to catch him, but he couldn't. Karina notes that he may not have to make excuses, since the human body is so weak that it is constantly forced to suffer from various unexpected injuries. He sighs heavily and dwells heavily on the words that he is making excuses. The girl decides that this shocked him incredibly. Before she left the house, he had a very bright face, in which there was not a drop of confusion. Now it seemed as if the crystal clear water had actually been sprinkled with ink. Karina wonders why the man came to her house. He says that he brought flowers for her and wanted to talk to her before leaving. The girl takes the bouquet and throws it on the dead man's face, saying that they need to bury the flowers with him. Renegar asks in surprise if she was intimate with this man. She denies it, reminding him that he is an ordinary person and then asks what he wanted to tell her. The guy doesn't understand whether he should tell her that Ciel came to confess his feelings. He is afraid that then she will probably feel regret. Renager reports that he himself does not know this. He suddenly realizes that he just lied and didn't even blush. The scriptures said that lying was unacceptable, but the guy didn't want Karina to feel sorry for this man. It was unclear to him why he had lied, if a man who was already dead could not in any way stop him. The guy remembers that the girl is actually an apocalypse, so she won't feel sorry for a person like him. Karina suddenly clarifies that he shouldn't have felt guilty because it was an accident. Renager says with concern that he had the opportunity to save him, but he didn't. He says that he is entirely to blame for his death. The girl asks how he can say such things about a person's death, looking into the eyes of Apocalypta, whose relatives he had been killing for a long time. She says that bad people can die, and for her this is enough reason to make her choice. Karina touches his neck and asks what he thinks about it. The people of Latham have always valued propriety for the most part. If there were disputes or misunderstandings between people, they simply prayed to God. This was due to the fact that strife between people, and especially killing each other, is contrary to God's law. Renager kneels before the girl and remembers how he used to live like this. Now it began to seem to him that there was some truth in her words. The guy suddenly asks if it's true that Karina is a descendant of the beloved of the god of the seas. The girl did not believe it, because she knew that all this was knowledge obtained from books. Renager remarks that it would be nice if she were her descendant. He explains that then he would understand the reason why he is so drawn to her. The guy reminds her that she decided to put her own life on the line to save his. He says that belief in God is just an attempt to come to terms with the fear of death. And in order to become someone's God, one must first get rid of all shortcomings. Karina understands that he didn't feel guilty in the first place. Renager was no longer someone who loved and revered God so much that he was ready to give his life for him. He kisses her, telling her that he doesn't have enough blood. The girl realizes that he has already fallen, that he has been completely consumed by passion. She slowly pulls away and smiles contentedly. Karina notes that she really is an apocalypse to the core. She says she never imagined that corrupting such a holy man would be so much fun. Pulling the guy closer to her, she communicates that she wants more. The girl playfully asks if he knew that she could show him even more. Renager suddenly grabs her by the waist and kisses her, leaving her no chance to mock him. Karina is very surprised, not understanding whether he was always such a good kisser. Luna, sitting on a tree branch, thinks about her older sister. She couldn't understand how she could destroy Apocalypse. The girl remembers how much Richie did for his favorite. Luna wondered how the girl dared to kill her father. A small monster lands on her hand, and she immediately squeezes it so hard that it dies. The girl says that all traitors must die. She was no longer so weak, because the second stage of her growth had ended, and now she knew a way to become even stronger. Luna understood that she could kill her even now. Suddenly, her older brother, Jael, appears in front of her. She is very happy and rushes towards him to hug him. The guy does not reciprocate, which greatly offends Luna. She reminds him that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and then asks if he missed her. Jael informs her that the time has come, and she should return to Apocalypta as soon as possible. The girl notes that her brother hasn't changed at all over this time. She says that apparently the tower has finally been restored. Luna says that she already knew about this. She suggests that it was very difficult to search for her brothers and sisters, one by one, and return them there. Smiling, she says that, thanks to him, many people were probably able to return. The girl slyly asks if her brother found Karina. When Jael hears such a familiar name, his attention to the dialogue increases several times. He asks in surprise if she found their sister. The guy grabs Luna by the dress and menacingly asks where Karina is. As he approaches the girl, she immediately smells human blood and realizes that he fought with someone again, but there was not a scratch left on him. She asks if he always makes that face when it comes to their sister, surprised that he likes her so much. Luna couldn't understand how the girl had managed to break their brother's steadfastness. She mockingly reminds him that Karina doesn't like him at all. The girl mentally confesses to her sister how much she hates her. She assumes that Jael is simply thirsty for her blood, since that is the only thing she could do to attract him. Luna happily suggests to him an idea, which is that the girl will deliver Karina's corpse to her brother, and he will make a stuffed animal out of her. She tells him not to worry about the blood, because she will carefully pour it into a jar. The guy, having no more patience, creates a fireball and again asks where their sister is. Luna smiles and moves to her griffin. stating that she doesn't like his angry face. She reminds him that he himself should know perfectly well that she will not tell him anything. The girl promises that she will be careful with Karina's body, but she might be missing some limbs. As she leaves, she says that she has always been interested in dissecting snakes. Jail notes that what he just saw was the power of one of them. He realizes that Luna killed someone and took his power. The guy says out loud that the fate of the weak is to be swallowed up by someone stronger. Karina breaks off the kiss and calls the man standing opposite her an impudent one. The guy points out that since she says that, next time he needs to be more assertive. He remarks that he would like to infuriate her even more. The girl had no idea what was on her interlocutor's mind. In fact, Renegar's role in this story was insignificant, because he was only the main character's first love. He was also considered a man with a kind heart and pure soul, who, unfortunately, died very early. At first, Karina thought that he was just a holy knight who would hate her as the storyline suggested, but now she began to doubt it. She notices that a lot of things have started to change in him. From a valiant knight, Renegade eventually turned into someone unknown. The girl had no idea where all this would ultimately lead. She smiles and remarks that it all looks very interesting. Renegar grabs her by the waist and suddenly asks why she is looking like that. He wonders if it might be that she wants to kiss him again. Karina, shocked, says that apparently this is what he wants. The guy lets her go and happily tells her that she is right. She says that they can't, because they have to leave early in the morning. When Renegar asks about the reason, the girl says that there are simply some reasons for this, because she did not intend to share her plans with him. She reports that they will reach Latham in about 4 days. The guy suddenly becomes gloomy when he hears about the number of days. He asks if this means that this is when they will break up. Karina playfully asks what he wanted. She asks him to speak and says that maybe she can help him. Renegar grabs her hand, stopping these gentle touches on his chest. He says that saying she can help him without having such intentions is a bad habit. The girl asks in surprise if this means he doesn't want it. The guy kisses her on the cheek and says that this is exactly what he likes about her. He says that he should go, leaving Karina in the same place blushing. Renegar reminds them that they need to leave tomorrow. The girl was infuriated by his behavior, but for some reason she wasn't angry. Chiron asks with interest if she has become attracted to this man. She asks with displeasure what the snake told Renegar. Chiron asks, confused, what they are talking about, pretending that he has nothing to do with it. He says that even if he hadn't said anything, the guy would have found out about everything sooner or later. The snake reminds that Renegar is a descendant of the god of the seas himself. Karina indignantly says that he didn't need to find out everything right now. Chiron says that he would rather hear about everything from them than from Latham's people, who will tell it from their point of view. Clutching her head with her hand, the girl says that this annoying man is driving her crazy. The snake suddenly notices that it seems to him that she even likes it. The girl recalls that she lived quietly for 3 whole years, and now she thinks that she can have a little fun. Karan reveals that he doesn't like the idea of having a human around at all when she's so weak. Karina says that although she wants to have fun, she is not going to cross the line. The problem was with Renegar himself, because just one drop of ink made the water in his mind irreversibly cloudy. The girl asks the pet to go to bed, saying that tomorrow they will need to leave this place. The snake says that if it is about Ciel's death, then he can simply destroy all the evidence. Karina wonders why he became so cheerful after eating well. She slowly takes the recently found note out of her pocket and shows it to Karan. The girl seriously reports that Luna was able to find them. Karina looks at her home for the last time and realizes that she is leaving her homeland. When she left her past life and walked away from Apocalypta, she didn't have this feeling. Chiron asks with displeasure if she really decided to run away because of some moon. He reminds her that the girl can kill her with a snap of her fingers, to which she says that it is too much trouble. Snake notes that, knowing Luna, it won't take Jail long to find Karina after her death. The girl says that she has time until she is found. She says that they need to buy as much time as possible and get Renegar to Latham as quickly as possible. Karina says that after this, everything will end, and the two of them will go somewhere far away. She says she only wants to live peacefully with her snake. Renegar comes out of the house and announces that he is also ready. The girl is surprised to notice that his shirt suits him very well. She says that these clothes fit him perfectly, running her hand over his exposed chest. The guy jumps back in embarrassment and blushes. Karina is surprised, because his body should have already gone through puberty. She remembers with a smile how Renegar attacked her yesterday. The girl points to the sword standing in the corner and asks the guy not to forget it. He is very surprised, and Karina reminds him that she promised to return the weapon as soon as they left. The guy's face blushes again, and he happily notes that she didn't deceive him after all. Already on the way, the girl asks if he trusted her too easily. She says that just because she didn't lie about it doesn't mean she's not going to lie about it again. Renager reports that she has not lied before, and therefore now inspires confidence. When the girl says that the holy sword won't like it, he says that he thinks that it won't care about him. He assumes that since the weapon doesn't talk to him, it doesn't listen to their dialogue. At that very second, the guy suddenly hears the sword, asking whether he wants to gain power. Karina looks at him in surprise and asks what the problem is. The guy reports that something is approaching them, and very familiar silhouettes become visible in the distance. She notices the griffins and assumes that Luna has already found her. The girl uses her power and kills several monsters. Another griffin flies towards them, and Renager readies his sword to attack the attacker. Karina suddenly appears in front of his face, fighting off the incoming griffin. She reminds that if the guy uses the power of the holy sword, he will die. The girl asks him to move away if he really wants to stay alive. He understands that he is incredibly weak compared to his friend. Even though she showed him mercy, it didn't mean they became equal. Karina was like a sea for him, living its own immortal life. He realized that he was just a man who was nothing without his sword. This weapon was useless, because the guy could die from it at absolutely any moment. The sword suddenly asks its owner again if he wants to gain power. Karina flies up to her sister and comes face to face with her. She, smiling, notes that they haven't seen each other for quite a long time. The one opposite looks gloomily at her interlocutor and is clearly not happy about this meeting. She asks how dare she smile right in her face. Seeing all these griffins, Karina notes that she still talks about herself in the third person, even though she told her to stop. She mockingly asks if these are really all the griffins she could collect. Luna says that she herself will decide how to conduct a dialogue with someone. Karina notes that the girl simply couldn't defeat her in a verbal argument, so she decided to attack. She directs her magic at her interlocutor and notices that she has changed, not for the better. Luna menacingly informs that today is the last day she can pretend to be so unrivaled. Her interlocutor grabs her head and realizes how much this irritates her. The girl says that she has completed the second stage of growth and, like the eldest, has taken the power from her brothers and sisters. Karina asks in surprise if she was really able to kill them and take their power. Her younger sister mockingly asks if she is shocked that she did the same as the one across from her. Karina thinks and reminds herself that she is different from her interlocutor. She never killed anyone to increase her power. Richie asked his daughter to relax, saying that otherwise the needle would not be able to enter her arm. The girl had no choice, and her only task was to become strong as quickly as possible and destroy the tower. She looked with curiosity at the shelves containing some strange mixtures. Karina asked her father what was inside one of the jars. The man said that it was the blood of the Hydra, intended for Saladin. In the original story, her brother became stronger thanks to this liquid. The girl understood that she also needed this power. She didn't care, because these creatures were already dead anyway. She asked her father to give her the Hydra's blood, because she wanted to become even stronger. Luna notes that it was very shameless to absorb others into oneself and become stronger thanks to this. She says that the girl always irritated her with her arrogance. Karina, observing the magic used by her sister, realizes that she killed Saladin's relatives. This meant that if not she, then their brother would soon kill the girl. She decides that since her little sister ruined her mood, she must pay for it. The girl reminds that the only one she killed, and from whom she took power, was Richie, whom her interlocutor loved so much. Luna angrily fires a ball of fire at her and tells her that this power should have been hers. She says that everything that now belongs to her sister was originally supposed to be hers. The girl looks angrily at the explosion she directed straight at her sister. She breathes heavily, hoping that she has finally died. Suddenly, Karina says behind her back that if she was so offended, she should have told Richie about it in the first place. Luna turns around and notices her sister holding her own fireball. Even though the younger one's actions were different from the original plot, she remained the same. It was worth hurting Luna's feelings even a little, and she would immediately go off the rails. The girl was so blinded by the power that she didn't even suspect that she had collected fragments within herself that, when combined, could give her even greater power. Karina mockingly asks if she lacks the strength that she took from their family members. she says, smiling. That Luna is a very greedy girl. The girl quite combines the fireball with her abilities. All this is directed at the younger one with words that she needs to be punished. Luna hated her older sister all her life. It started from the very moment she was born. From the moment she first opened her eyes. The girl always followed her father, because it was natural for those who, being an experiment of the apocalypse, were suddenly honored with the opportunity to gain life. Luna felt special among everyone, and that's why she hated Karina. If Richie gave an order, she always followed it flawlessly, while her older sister did nothing but get on her nerves and run away. Karina may have obeyed at times, but she still didn't do the job properly. Despite this, Richie still treasured the eldest the most. He preferred her more than Luna, who always obeyed him unquestioningly. The girl had to grovel at his feet like a dog to earn even a drop of attention. Karina at the same time received much more love, even if she just sat by the window, like a grateful cat licking her fur. The girl looked at her younger sister, captivated by Karan, who had enlarged himself. Luna says that her interlocutor is insanely pathetic because she uses her power against her. Karina reminds them that this is the one who killed their relatives and took their power. She says she doesn't want to spend a lot of time on the younger one. This was true, because the girl was now incredibly weak. It took all her remaining strength to turn her sister's weapon against her. Karina looks piercingly at her interlocutor, preparing to turn her to stone. The moon begins to slowly turn to stone, but suddenly, in an instant, it is restored. The girl looks at her in surprise, not understanding why her power didn't work. The captured one happily tells that she has the power of a gargoyle, which gives immunity to this ability. Karina is even more amazed by this, because this power belonged to Jael. She asks if she was able to kill her older brother as well, but receives a negative answer. Luna says that he gave it to her himself and asked her to kill Karina. She mockingly asks how she feels when she is betrayed by someone from whom she least expected it. The elder one approaches her and asks who taught her to lie like that. She remarks that Jael must be missing her so much right now that he's bursting into tears. Karina says he could never do something like that. Suddenly, Luna spits at the one opposite her, without having any words in response. The older one angrily asks why she is so stupid. She reminds him that if he leaves her alive, she will still be killed by Saladin, whose relatives she killed. Karina prepares to use magic and says that it will not hurt her, and she will not even notice that she died. Suddenly, she is pushed away by a griffin that flies up to its owner. The girl is very surprised, because she was sure that she had killed all the monsters. She is about to use her power again, but suddenly feels a piercing pain in her neck. Karina is rapidly flying down, unable to spread her wings again. She coughs up a bunch of blood and clutches her sore shoulder where she landed earlier. The snake asks worriedly if she is okay. The girl looks up and sees a griffin rushing towards them, with Luna as its rider. Karina gets to her feet and wonders why everyone seems to want to piss her off. She turns around and suddenly sees Reniger in front of her, his eyes duller than usual. The girl nervously asks herself what happened to him again. The sword asks its owner if he wishes to gain power. After a short silence, Reniger gives the weapon a negative answer. He says he knows he will die if he uses it. Sword asks what difference it makes to him if he is a knight of Latham and the son of a god. He reminds that the guy should follow God's will and not cling to his life. The weapon says that his body and blood belong to God, and only in this way will God live within him. He adds that his very flesh and life are all God's will and grace. The sword invites him to continue his journey in another guise. He says that the wages of sin is death, and God's gift will be eternal life in Latham. The weapon reminds that the sins that Reniger carries with him from birth can only be atoned for by death. The boy approaches the shining sword, mesmerized, telling him that the Son of God is obliged to shed sinful blood. The weapon asks its owner if he still fears death. Reniger takes the sword in his hand and gives a negative answer. Karina calls out to the guy, but does not receive any response. She remembers that she asked him not to interfere and stay away, but he even took out a sword. It seemed to her that he would hardly be able to resist Luna now. She says they need to stop Reniger as soon as possible. Chiron looks at her questioningly, not understanding why they would do this. Karina reminds him that if he dies, the same thing awaits her because of the contract they signed. The snake wonders if there is any other reason for this. Suddenly, the guy rushes past her and appears behind her. At that very second, he launches an attack, which the girl manages to repel. She is surprised when she realizes that she was his target from the start. Stepping aside, she mentally curses the holy sword. It was perfectly clear to her that Renegar was not responsible for his actions, because the weapon had consumed his mind. The girl notes that Lathium's strength greatly exceeded her expectations. She assumes that the sword decided to use all of the boy's life force, since its intentions became known to Renegar. Karina quickly orders the snake to tie up the attacker's legs, which the second one does without question. The guy, not expecting the snake to attack, jumps on the spot in confusion. She suddenly straightens her claws and points them straight at her opponent. The girl does not wound him, but only places the tip of her claw against Renegar's skin. She asks him to come to his senses and says that now is not the time to fight at all. Karina turns to the holy sword and says that if this continues, the guy really could die. Suddenly, Renegar takes a step forward, and the girl's claw pierces him through. The girl steps back and realizes that her death is not far away. A huge spear suddenly appears between them. Luna wonders what her sister is doing there. She mockingly asks if she has forgotten about the battle with the younger one. The girl sees the man from Latham and wonders why Karina doesn't kill him. The eldest one says that it is none of her business at all, not wanting to give any answer. Luna notices that the girl is angry with her for the first time in a long time. She suddenly launches her spear at the guy, but he manages to defend himself. The girl notes that her older sister is very careful with Renegar and says that in that case, she is obliged to kill him. She sends a fireball towards the guy, but Karina manages to form a huge dome around them. The elder angrily asks Renegar to finally come to his senses. She turns around and notices the frightened look of the person standing next to her. Karina realizes that her acquaintance has just plunged a holy sword into her. She falls to her knees, losing more and more of her strength with each passing second. Chiron shouts worriedly at her to gather her courage and continue the fight. The girl gets to her feet and irritably grabs the guy by his shirt. She says that if he still doesn't come to his senses after this, she will definitely kill him. After this, Karina kisses Renegar, which surprises him quite a bit. The sword immediately begins to scream at its owner to finish off the apocalypse standing nearby. The guy who came to his senses doesn't understand how he could even allow the thought of killing Karina. The weapon tells him that this is the true power of Latham, and no apocalypse can stand against it. The sins that Renegar has had since birth can only be atoned for by death. He always went to the battlefield with the thought that as soon as the battle was over, he would die. The light of the sword was his strength and even life. That is why the guy never heard or asked for communication that this weapon would save his life. God had already wanted to end Renegar's life several times. He slowly pulls away from Karina's lips and looks at her frightened face. He didn't understand why this girl gave him a chance to live in this world. The sword suddenly again cries out to its owner in alarm that now is the time to kill the apocalypse. Renegar could only atone for his sins with death, but Karina always desperately tried to save him. That is why the guy decides to refuse to atone for his sins and refuses to die. The second this decision is made, the sword immediately ends up on the ground and not in the guy's hands. Renegar rushes to the girl and asks in tears why she didn't kill him. Karina asks herself which of them should be crying now. She pushes him away and asks him to get out of the way, since he has finally come to his senses. The girl says that if he feels sorry, then first he should melt the holy sword. She reminds him that he can't be trusted at all. Renegar asks worriedly about her condition, and she replies that it is none of his business. He wonders if he was the cause of the wound on her hand. Karina reveals that she would not have fallen under his sword twice, and that this wound appeared during the fight with Luna. Suddenly, her hand darkens, and in place of the previous one, a new, completely healthy limb appears. She assumes that it looked disgusting on the guy's part. Renegar says he would never have said such a thing because it looked so great. Suddenly, a loud roar is heard from above, distracting their attention. The girl tells her interlocutor to run away as soon as the barrier dissipates. He wonders with concern how she will do it with such wounds. Karina notes that he will be even less able to defeat Luna. Renegar suddenly grabs the holy sword again, refusing to leave. She indignantly shouts at him to put the weapon out of his hands, turning to her interlocutor. Suddenly, the guy's use of the sword takes on a new appearance, and it looks completely different. Karina notes that this was a completely different force. Luna guesses that there must be some weak spot in her sister's barrier. She carefully examines the surface of the protection and notices what she needs. The girl happily charges a fireball and is about to direct it towards the enemy. Suddenly, sparks of unknown origin begin to appear around her. Luna is very surprised, because none of the apocalypse possessed such power. Renegar reports that the power he holds in his hands is the power of God himself. Karina glances at him and notices that his blonde hair has suddenly turned black. The guy says that now he can finally renounce everything. Penelope, surrounded by a whole bunch of monsters, asks herself if this is really the end. She clenches her hand into a fist and notes how unfair this all is. She was sorry that she was never able to avenge the dead Renegar. Suddenly, in a couple of moments, someone gets rid of the entire crowd and stands right in front of the girl. She asks in surprise who it is, not finding a single familiar feature in the guy. The stranger lowers his sword and turns to face his acquaintance. In front of her stood her old friend Cachette Latham. Penelope asks in shock what happened to him. What interested her most was why his hair had suddenly turned black. The guy says that he found true power, which was inside the sword itself. He says that this color symbolizes the color of their resentment. When Penelope asks who he is talking about, he says that it doesn't matter now. Cachette informs her that she only needs to know that he has become the true owner of the Holy Sword. He was the new owner of the very sword that Renegar left behind. Thus, Cachette gained the true power of the Holy Sword and, uniting with Penelope, destroyed Apocalypse. This was the real end of the novel. Karina couldn't understand why Renegar had suddenly acquired absolute power instead of his old acquaintance. The guy was the very hero who should have died at the very beginning of the story. It was only after his death that Penelope's power was able to awaken, and through this, the secondary male characters followed her, which is how the main plot began. Karina didn't want to give in to the flow of the original story, and tried in every way to save Renegar, and something similar happened. Now the girl couldn't even imagine what would happen next. Karan asks if everything is okay, and she says she was just thinking about something. The snake asks if they can definitely not interfere with what Renegar is going to do. In the original, after Cachette gained the power of the Holy Sword, he became the guise of a god. The girl suddenly asks Kiran if he ever thought that the force that has always protected this world could also destroy it. She notes that Luna will definitely not be able to defeat the current renegade. This was because the sword was originally created to protect this world. The guy notices that the weapon still hasn't uttered a single word. He assumes that he will not hear anything more from the sword. Renegar suddenly realizes that he is filled with the feeling that he can fly freely upwards. Luna asks the man standing opposite her who he is and why Karina is so protective of him. She asks what kind of relationship they have and why he came with her. The girl comes closer and says that she is incredibly interested in all of this. She promises that she will be merciful and kill him quickly if he answers her questions. Renegar notes that, unlike Karina, the girl was an entity that contradicted nature itself. He says that the Apocalypse beings he knew before had a cocky and arrogant appearance. The guy says that they considered themselves gods and always looked down on people. He says that it was for this very reason that he always killed them mercilessly. Renegar notes that, although the girls were from the same family, they were completely different. Karina, although a little arrogant, did not have that darkness in her. That's why this time the guy could kill without any remorse. The moon, having lost patience, creates another fireball. She is surprised that such a man allows the possibility of defeating her. The girl asks how such a pathetic puppy like him dares to raise his hand against her. She suddenly notices that this power of the sacred sword even frightens her a little. Luna decides that she will not admit this under any circumstances. She wonders if Karina would like it if she killed him. Taking a quick glance at her sister, she realizes how much she wants to see her despair. The girl wanted her to think that she had lost to her and lost everything. She wanted to see her pitiful tears for the first time in her life. Luna decides to kill Renegar first, and then her older sister. She glances at Karina again, and suddenly notices that she is smiling. It looked as if the girl was simply watching an interesting performance from afar. Suddenly, a sacred sword flies past the moon, cutting her arm in half. She wonders how he managed to do something like that in just the moment she spent looking at her sister. In a matter of seconds, Renegar approaches the enemy again and prepares to attack. He says that he feels he is at least worthy of comparison with a large dog. The guy assumes it must hurt to be bitten by a huge dog. Suddenly, Luna evaporates and disappears from her opponent's sight, leaving the battlefield. Renegar wasn't at all surprised that he couldn't defeat Apocalypse with such a mediocre attack. He understands that she never had a chance of winning anyway. In fact, the guy was much more glad that Karina managed to withstand his attack. The guy comes up to her and tells her that he missed the moon. He says that he inflicted serious wounds on her so that she could not go far, and the girl asks if he wants to go after her. Renegar informs that if she orders him to do something similar, he will do it with pleasure. Karina reminds him with a smirk that he is a knight of Latham. Despite this, the guy now behaved like her obedient dog. She playfully asks which of the two options he prefers. Previously, Renegar lived only for God, and, having heard such words, he would certainly have become enraged, taking them as an insult. Karina informs him that the sword no longer has power over him, and all its power, including the power of the dead, now belongs to the guy. She says he is no longer in danger from using weapons. This was due to the fact that he became its true owner. Renegar suddenly wonders how his interlocutor knows all this. Even God never gave him signs to understand the reasons for the things that were happening to him. The guy decides that his true savior is not God, but the girl standing in front of him. He says that this is probably the reason why the sword no longer tells him anything. Karina says that this is why he must return to where he was originally. The girl adds that he will have to overcome this entire journey alone. Renegar's eyes immediately widen in surprise, and not a trace of a smile remains on his face. He asks if this means she wants him to return to Latham alone. The guy says that he specifically doesn't want this at all. He recalls that the girl had previously made a promise that they would go there together. Karina explains that it was only for his protection. She says that now he is strong enough and can do without her help. Renegar suddenly announces that he is not that strong. He says that if someone orders him to kill Apocalypta, he will not be able to do it. The girl realized that he had developed a feeling of affection for her, which greatly infuriated her. She suggests that we first take a walk and talk calmly. Karina notes that the weather is nice enough, that it would be nice to enjoy it, rather than continue arguing. The guy doesn't understand whether this means that she might change her mind a little later. He always fought with a strong belief in the goal he was pursuing. That is why her behavior was completely incomprehensible to him now. The girl was in no hurry, was not afraid, and did not persist. He suggests that this is because her view of the world is completely different from what he has been taught his entire life. Renegar wonders if she always behaves like this. He says that the girl looks as if she is completely detached from this world and everything that happens in it. Karina steps forward and says that it is not about detachment at all. She looks into the distance and says that this is humility. The guy asks worriedly what she has come to terms with. He assumes that her risking her life to save him was simply so that she would not have any regrets before she died. Renegar asks if she has come to terms with the fact that she will die. The girl says that she has neither an irresistible desire to live nor an irresistible desire to die. She was born for the first time into a world where killing people was forbidden, no matter the circumstances. Every person living in this world knew about it. That is why those who crossed this line were incredibly few. It felt as if the devil himself only considered such a choice in extreme cases. After the girl ended up here, she became the evil of this world, which could take the life of anyone on a daily basis. In order to get used to such radical changes and not go crazy, it was necessary not to swim against the current, but to come to terms with everything and just let go. In fact, sometimes Karina thought that if she died in this world, she would be able to get to another, better world. Her brothers and sisters died, giving their power to a child who didn't understand anything and burdening her with the responsibility of becoming stronger. The girl says that, so that they would not die in vain, she had to stay alive. Renegar notes that it is rather stupid to live for this reason alone. She asks if he can understand her, when all he has done all his life is survive for a higher purpose. Karina reveals that she killed her father and destroyed the tower because she did not want to spend her entire life in war and clinging to existence. She says that now she doesn't want it anymore. The girl says that there is no meaning in her life, and nothing will change whether she dies or lives. She says that if she is destined to live, she wants to spend all her time in peace and tranquility. At such moments, she allowed herself to think about the future. But since she had destroyed her world with her own hands, she could no longer be near him. Karina suddenly says that she agrees to go with him to the borders of Latham. The only condition she makes is that he must not try to look for her after this. Luna, landing near the battlefield, promises her sister out loud that she will destroy her. She grows a new arm and realizes that she only lost because of the man from Latham. Suddenly, she notices someone's presence and decides that the guy has followed her. The girl sees how her last griffin was captured by an unknown person. She breathes a sigh of relief when she realizes it's not Renegar. Luna angrily asks what right the stranger has to touch her children. Penelope notices that in front of her stands Apocalypta, who killed all of Defon's spirits and escaped. She says that she is very happy about their sudden meeting. The girl says that she was looking for her in order to kill her. Luna wonders how she is going to do this, being just a human. Suddenly, she is grabbed by the neck and lifted up. Apocalypta saw this power for the first time and immediately recognized it as incredible. Penelope notes that they all always say that when they see her in front of them. She says it is an honor for someone like her to die at the hands of a man. The girl pins the opponent to the ground and prepares to attack. Finally, she says that Luna, so be it, may not thank her. Karina, sitting in the hotel after Kuhiran, looks out the window in bewilderment. Her internal injuries had not yet fully healed, but because of the chaos, she could not return home. Renegar managed to rent a room in a hotel, so the girl felt a little calmer. She thought the guy lived a life cut off from the world, but she had no idea that he could book rooms like a normal person. Because his hair turned black, he began to blend in with other people. Kyron suddenly asks what she's thinking about, and then asks if anything is bothering her. In fact, he was right, and the girl really was worried about something. With the power that should have been wielded by another, now in the hands of Renegar, it became difficult to predict how events would unfold next. She couldn't tell the snake about it, so she simply said that her neck hurt. Kyron worriedly assumes that the wound began to open up and fester, which was to the girl's advantage, since she wanted to distract him with this conversation. Suddenly, the snake suggests that she try to find Lephios. His skills in medicine were undoubtedly better than anyone else's, although his methods did have some side effects. He begins to insist that she ask him for help, but Karina aggressively makes it clear to him that she does not want this. She reports that despite the fact that she was in hiding all this time, Luna managed to find her, which means that the others are looking for her too. The girl says that if she meets Lephios, she will definitely reveal her location to them. She assumes that if she is caught, she will be sent to the tower again, but this time it will be much more difficult to escape. If it is revealed that she killed Richie, she will be executed, and even if it is not revealed, she will be forced to participate in the war. Kiran is silent for a moment and asks what about Renegar's help. He reminds that the guy has healing powers, and if he helps, then at least for a while, the problem will be solved. The girl recalls that during the battle with Luna, when she kissed Renegar to bring him to his senses, her wounds began to heal. Although it sounded ridiculous, it was actually possible to try this method. Karina didn't want to, only because the guy's eyes didn't resemble a loyal dog, but rather the gaze of a greedy snake. She realized that if he really were an obedient dog, he would be more like Saladin. Kyron asks if something is bothering his mistress again, but receives a negative answer. Suddenly, a very happy Renegar enters the room with a whole bag of groceries. He says this should be enough to restore energy. Karina reminds him that she doesn't have to eat it all. He scratches the back of his head awkwardly and says that he was still very worried. The girl calculates that it will take a couple of days to get to Lathem at best, and if they are delayed, then 4 days. She suddenly says that instead of food, she would like to have something else now. Karina grabs the man standing opposite her by the shirt and pulls him closer to her. She tells Renegar in a commanding tone to kiss her right now. The girl was an apocalypse, God's enemy, and he, on the contrary, was God's servant. This wasn't supposed to happen between them, but at least for the duration of their contract, Karina wanted to take advantage of his healing power. Renegar, completely obeying the will of the girl in front of him, embraces her in a kiss. Saladin carefully runs his claw across the corpse's skin and discovers the power of his kin within. He felt sorry that Luna died, because he wanted to personally take revenge on her for the death of his brothers. Besides this, the guy wanted to use her mana core, but it exploded. He smells someone from Defen and is surprised that there is someone so cruel in their clan. Saladin decides to take a closer look at the dead man's scent. Suddenly, he feels something familiar, but very subtle. Without a doubt, it was the scent of Karina Apocalypta. The guy was completely sure that his sister had previously dated Luna. He suggests that, in this case, it was Karina who became the killer of the younger one. Saladin immediately dismisses this thought, because in that case, the scent would also remain on the trees. Suddenly, he hears Jael's voice nearby, asking what this guy is doing here. The elder reminds him that he had previously been ordered to appear at the tower. Saladin indignantly asks why he should obey him. Suddenly, Jael aims his blow at him, but luckily misses. The younger one asks if he really intended to kill him. He replies that those who do not obey the leader must die. Saladin indignantly reports that he did not recognize him as his leader. He also asks him not to say his name with his mouth, otherwise he will vomit. Jael suddenly asks if he wants to know where Karina is. Another attack flies past the younger one. Suddenly, Saladin is grabbed by the leg by his brother's magic, after which he is slammed into the ground with great force. The younger one, slowly getting up, indignantly says that it hurt. In fact, Jael really did intend to kill his brother, and in the past, such a blow would have really led to something like this. He notes that Saladin has become stronger, and then tells him that if he does not want to be destroyed, he should return home. The guy flies higher and says that he is going to bring Karina there soon. The girl notices how assertive Renegar is and clutches a piece of the blanket in her hand. She wasn't at all against it, because in fact she liked it too. When she first met him, he was very cautious and didn't let her get close to him. At this point, the guy became so attached that he didn't want to let go. Suddenly, Karan, climbing up Renegar's back, asks what she is enjoying so much. He reminds that the girl only wanted treatment. But this is too much. Karina sternly asks why he is still here, if he could have been a little more tactful and just left. The snake suddenly notices that it seems that it is not only the guy who has changed a lot. The girl tries to clarify what he meant, but Karan simply leaves. She believed that Renegar was the only one who was corrupted by this pleasure. And since she was an apocalypse, it was in her blood from the very beginning. The guy suddenly notices that the wound on her neck has become even bigger. He worriedly reports that if we leave things as they are, it might even become infected. Renegar says he would like to treat her. Karina mockingly asks if this will look indecent from the outside. He runs his tongue along her neck and says that everything connected with her can only be wonderful. The guy says he just wants her not to get hurt. She remarks that it seems that thanks to him, she will not be able to die. Renegar suddenly claims that she will not die in any case. He says that this will definitely not happen. Karina noticed that even though his body had changed, his eyes were still clear and there was not a drop of darkness in them. She informs him that he can only help her until he returns to Latham. The guy suddenly says that he wants them to go to the temple together. He reminds her that it was only thanks to her help that he was able to change, for which the girl must answer. Renegar insists that she take responsibility for him. The girl wondered if she could make it so that there would be darkness in his eyes too if she continued. She immediately puts this thought aside, because she understands that these are just emotions. Karina stands up and indignantly asks why she should go to the temple with him. She understands that she must not forget about the existence of reality. Observing the surprised face of her interlocutor, she reminds him that their deal was only that she would take him to the gates of Latham. He grabs her hand and asks if Apocalypse is chasing her. The guy says that if she goes to the temple with him, she will be safe. For Karina, helping always became a duty, and duty a burden, so it was easier for her to be alone. She wonders how Apocalypse can go to the main temple. He reminds her that, although she is an enemy of God, she previously saved his life. The girl says that this does not change her true nature, and there is no point in Apocalypse and man being together. Suddenly, Renegar asks why she lived in the human world then, pretending to be human. Karina's eyes widen at first, but after a couple of seconds, she angrily grabs her interlocutor by the hair. She notes that he has become much bolder than before. The girl mockingly asks where the cowardly dog who used to cower at the sight of her has gone. She says she didn't raise him to be a hunting dog. Grabbing her hand again, Renegar asks why he can't be a loyal dog who protects her. He says that in Latham, she will be able to safely enjoy her daily life. Karina wonders what guarantees there are that the people in the temple won't come for her. The guy kisses her wrist and promises that he will protect her. She mockingly asks if he really thinks he can keep her safe. The girl assumes that he wants a doll for himself, which he can always protect in his arms. She says she is far from becoming someone like that. Finally, Karina says that she will not go to Latham, after which she asks him not to make her repeat herself. She enters the room where the snake is, which wakes him up. He says he heard screams and then asks if everything is okay. The girl tells him about Renegar's offer to go together to the territory of Latham. Suddenly, all the guests in the main hall become silent and look in one direction. The reason was Karina, slowly descending the stairs straight towards them. She continues her dialogue with the snake using telepathy and says that Renegar's proposal is complete nonsense. The girl indignantly asks why Chiron doesn't comment on this. The snake suddenly says that it would be a good idea for her to go there. He reminds her that Jael is looking for her, and in her current state, Karina won't be able to defeat him. She tells Karan again that she has no intention of going anywhere. Unexpectedly, Renegar sits down next to her, reminding her that she still hasn't eaten anything. The girl didn't understand if he had even a drop of pride if he followed her after she told him all this. He notices that there are a lot of people here who are looking around casually. Karina says that, from her point of view, he is no different from them at all. The guy happily reports that everything she says is correct. She remarks that this is rather boring, and Renegar admits that he is ready to become a rebel if that is what she prefers. He reminds her of her words about how he is no different from those people, after which he clarifies that their behavior is inappropriate. The guy angrily informs her that she is not something to be stared at. Karina notices with a grin that he is also staring at her. He suddenly says that she can gouge out his eyes right here and now if it bothers her. The girl is very surprised that, apparently, he has felt exactly this kind of blind love for Latham all his life. She reports that it doesn't bother her that much. Karina adds that it will be difficult not to look at each other while they talk. He wonders if this means he is different from others. Renegar asks if she would be at peace if he gouged out the eyes of all these people right now. The girl decides that if this wicked love is the kind of love that God receives, then appearing to him might be fun. At night, Karina goes to the cemetery with her snake. Chiron asks why she came here at such a late hour. She says that she wants to check something. With a single snap of the girl's fingers, several dead people suddenly emerge from under the ground. She asks if there have been any suspicious movements near them or signs of Jail's presence. The zombies answer negatively, and the girl asks if they have seen bats. After thinking for a bit, the dead men suddenly give a positive answer. She tells the snake that her brother must be somewhere nearby. Since they were near a village, and there were no caves nearby, the only bats that could appear here were Jail's familiars. Even though he had established contact with Luna, the girl thought he would be too busy rebuilding the tower to be interested in her. Karina orders the dead to return. Seeing no further need for them, she realizes that she had completely underestimated her brother's obsession. Chiron wonders what she plans to do now. He says that while Jail is around, she won't be able to make any hasty moves, so she needs to get ready for Latham. The girl refuses again, and the snake asks her not to be so stubborn. He asks if she doesn't understand that this is the best option. In fact, Karina understood this perfectly well, because it was better to avoid meeting with Jail if possible. The guy was the most powerful villain in the original story, as well as the final boss. His madness has long since gone beyond the scope of what was originally written in the novel. She remembers Jail coming up to her and asking what her blood tasted like. The guy begged her to let him try at least a little. He said that he could not bear the torment of this curiosity. Instead of fear, Karina always felt disgust. It was at that moment that her ultimate goal was finally fully defined. It wasn't just survival. It was survival until the Apocalypse family was completely destroyed. They were destined to be destroyed by the awakened Penelope and her companions when the divine demon broke out. Karina always wanted to see the tower collapse from a safe place with her own eyes. After that, she planned to find the hidden members of the Apocalypse and kill them one by one, completely depriving them of any chance of revival. She then wanted to extract the mana cores of her siblings embedded in her body. The girl had to arrange a funeral for each of them and let them disappear. Only when all the debts were paid, at the very end, would she be able to end her life. Karina notices an apple nearby and involuntarily remembers Renegar again. Suddenly, the plot changed dramatically. For Apocalypta to be destroyed, Penelope had to awaken. Cachette, the second main character, was supposed to become the master of the sacred sword. It was unknown what would happen to the main character's revenge if Penelope found out that Renegar was still alive. It was also unclear about Cachette, who was supposed to become the master of the sacred sword, which is still occupied by another person. The girl didn't know if the unawakened protagonists would be able to defeat Apocalypta. She says out loud that if the Allied forces cannot defeat Apocalypta, then she will have to fight. After a short silence, Kiran asks if she is afraid of dying. Karina responds with denial, because when has she ever experienced something similar? As she heads towards Latham, the girl assumes that Jail's followers must know where she is going. She knew she couldn't defeat her brother on her own, but if Renegar joined, they would buy themselves some time. Karina wondered how things had gotten to this point if she had hidden it so well before. She understands that if she had not met Renegar earlier, nothing would have happened. Suddenly, the guy grabs her hand, distracting her from her own thoughts. He asks her worriedly if everything is okay. Renegar explains that she did not answer him, even though he called out to her several times. Suddenly, the girl sees an unknown flicker in the distance. She uses her power and kills the monsters that have been preparing to attack all this time. Karina continues on her way as if nothing had happened, reporting that she was lost in her thoughts. She asks if the path has always been this dangerous, reminding them that they have already encountered dozens of monsters. The guy explains that it's because they're on Lathiem's land, and they're all naturally drawn here. Karina finds it funny that monsters are attracted to holy power. Even if they knew they would die if they came into contact with the holy power, they still approached it instinctively. Suddenly, Renegar finds this situation somewhat similar to the girl's situation, but refuses to explain the details. Karina notes that they are seeing more and more monster nests, which must mean they are getting closer. He confirms her guess and says that they will soon reach the road. The guy worriedly says that he can deal with the monsters himself, because she is not fully recovered. She says his injury was more serious, and if he gets hurt, then when they get to the gates of Latham, all the responsibility will fall on her. Suddenly, he suggests that she move a little to the left. Karina asks what's wrong, assuming it will be faster that way. She turns around and notices a dead body next to her. The girl asks if he thought that she would be disgusted to see something like that. She suddenly thinks about how happy Karan would be if they found the monster who left such a big will. Karina understands that she is really very different from a human. She says that there are probably a lot of people looking for Renegar in Latham, and then asks if he has anyone in mind. The guy says that there is one girl who has been following him everywhere since they were kids. She immediately realizes that we are talking about the main character, Penelope. Renegar reports that she treats him like a family member, but Karina understood perfectly well that she treats him more like a lover. He says that the girl was probably saddened by his disappearance, so she will be delighted with his return. Karina recalls how obsessed Penelope was with him in the original story. She says he's very lucky that he's wanted there, not understanding why it irritates her so much. Suddenly, the guy catches up with her and turns her towards him, grabbing her hand. He asks if she has forgotten what he did and said earlier. Renegar says it doesn't matter who's waiting for him. He says that the only thing that worries him very much is that Karina is far away from him. She pulls her hand away and says that she is already next to him now. The guy seriously asks if she really thinks so. He says that sometimes he feels like she doesn't belong to anyone at all. That's why he wanted to hold on to her even tighter. The girl says that he himself knows perfectly well that this is impossible. He asks if it is because he is a holy knight. Suddenly, the sword wakes up and begins to shine brightly. Renegar immediately reports that the weapon, for some reason, began to speak to him again. He says that the holy sword told him to run away somewhere immediately. Chiron appears out of nowhere and says that the weapon is right, and a huge monster suddenly appears in front of them. The guy immediately grabs a sword in his hands, and Karina realizes that this creature is responsible for all these corpses. She wasn't sure why her snake needed to warn them about a mid-level monster. Suddenly, the air is filled with red smoke of unknown origin, and the creature dies immediately. Both Karina and Renegar immediately understand who caused this event. The guy realizes that the nightmare of that very day when he was supposed to die is returning to him again. He covers the girl with himself, asking her to be careful, and then asks if she's okay. Karina understands that no matter how resilient he is as a person, he cannot remain in this toxic smoke for too long. She reminds that a mid-level monster had already died from this smoke. The girl says that he should get out of here if he wants to return to Latham. He asks if she wants him to leave her right now. Unexpectedly for him, Karina suddenly gives a positive answer. Renegar wipes the blood from his lip and says he's not going to do it. He stands facing his opponent again, hiding his interlocutor behind him, and says that he will protect her. Suddenly, the girl invites him to take her with him and run away together. He turns to her and, smiling, tells her that it sounds much better. A blush appears on Karina's face, and she looks away in embarrassment. Renegar asks uncertainly if this is who he thinks it is. She confirms his suspicions and reports that this apocalypse had already tried to kill him once. He smiles and says that this is the one he has long wanted to meet again. The girl knew very well that if he was a true master of the sacred sword, he would be able to defeat even Jael. Her gaze suddenly becomes more uncertain, and she asks herself why she is so worried. The boy wonders if it will all be over if they can survive this battle. He asks if this is the last apocalypse who is looking for her. Karina denies it and says that she is quite popular. Renegar steps forward and says that he was not pleased to hear that. He asks her not to forget that he is the only one who is always waiting for her. Suddenly, all the red smoke begins to accumulate in one place, forming a ball. The girl reminds that survival is the priority right now. The smoke partially clears, and Jael appears from it, asking what his sister is doing here. He reminds her that she shouldn't be here at all. Karina grabs her companion by the hand and says that she will decide for herself where she will be. She asks if her brother finds it pathetic to pursue her for so long. The girl asks if Jael ever thought about her reason for leaving the tower. She says she left because she couldn't stand to see his disgusting face anymore. Renegar notices how the girl touches and presses herself closer to him and asks what is the matter. She asks him to stand still and explains that the poison heals exactly in the places where she touches it. Karina tells her brother that it's pathetic how clingy he is. She casts her magic on him and tells him that he should quietly go to the tower if he doesn't want to die. Jael deflects her attack and angrily reports that she is greatly weakened. He looks closely at the man standing next to her and assumes that it has something to do with him. Apocalypse decides to direct her next attack at him. Renegar blocks the attack with his holy sword, and Jael notices that the light coming from the weapon is different from Lathem's. He says that, despite the fact that the guy was able to block his punch, it definitely won't happen again. Suddenly, he notices that his sister comes to the guy's defense and uses her power, directing it at her opponent. He mockingly asks why the girl is protecting the man. Apocalypse notes that he didn't even know she was capable of protecting anything. Karina attacks her interlocutor and informs him that she is not such a crazy test subject as he is. The opponent parries the blow, and she realizes that he is incredibly strong. Jael notes that his sister was able to escape even in such a weakened state. He says that she is weak and constrained because of the person standing next to her. As he charges another attack, he states that after so many years of searching, the fact that his reward is this pathetic version of Karina is unacceptable. The guy asks if she will come to her senses if he can kill this man. He believed that Karina belonged to him even before she was born. Jael thought that if, by some chance, she died in the war against the humans, then that would be the moment when he would surpass his father in strength. He made assumptions about what would happen if he killed her with his own hands. The guy assumed that in this case, he would be able to become stronger. It was her cold and strong character that was able to keep him from this temptation. After the tower collapsed, the girl hid so well that it took years to find even a trace of her. And after so much time, Jael finally managed to find her shadow. He thought that once he found his sister, everything would be over. The guy believed that all he had to do was return her to the tower. He thought that if he created a room at the highest point and locked her there, it would put an end to his melancholy. This was what he believed in all these years. Jael remembers with anger that the girl smiled at the guy standing next to her. He attacks the two of them, realizing that Karina has never smiled at him in her entire life. Apocalypse remarks that he spent too much time killing this small fry. He takes a closer look and suddenly realizes that he has just made a big mistake. Renegar is relieved to see that his companion is still alive, and then realizes that she is not that weak. After this, he gets to Jael and wounds his wing. When the guy lands, Karina praises him quite a bit. She decides that living on the run forever seems like too much of a hassle. Immediately, countless dead people emerge from underground under her leadership. The girl says that she thinks it would be better to just kill her brother instead. Chiron suddenly asks her to calm down and think about her health. He says that repelling Jael's attack was already difficult enough. The snake asks what might happen if she also raises so many undead at once. This didn't stop Karina, because she thought that they had to kill their enemy here and now. For some reason, she had the feeling that Jael wasn't as strong as he was in the original story. She assumes that he also had some kind of awakening in the middle of the novel that she forgot about. It wasn't that Renegar was a master of the sacred sword, but this situation was favorable for them. Finally, they had a good opportunity to speed up the fall of Apocalypse. Karina notes that she has never seen such an expression on her brother's face before. She attacks him again, noting that it is quite pleasant. The girl notices that he still continues to dodge her attacks. She understands that she can't do it anymore if this drags on any longer. Suddenly, Renegar blocks her path, begging her to stop. He says that he will deal with the enemy himself. Karina understands that it is still extremely difficult for the human body to resist this toxic fog. She asks the guy to step aside, saying that he looks like he's going to fall over before her. Suddenly, the girl feels a piercing pain in her neck. She turns around and notices a pleased Karan involved in this. Karina realizes that her snake and Renegar conspired and injected her with a sleeping poison. The guy reminds her that he promised to protect her. He says that's why he doesn't want to hear her worry about him. The girl reminds him that he could die. Renegar smiles and says that he simply cannot die here. He says that he will definitely live exactly until their oath is broken. After this, The guy stands facing his enemy and explains that he must save Karina. Suddenly, Penelope senses a bloody battle nearby. It was a prelude to a brutal battlefield where monsters try to kill each other and cut through everyone. Her subordinates ask worriedly if she is okay. The girl understands that this energy, the sign of the goddess of war, cannot be confused with anything. She reports that Apocalypse is located not far from them. The subordinates are very surprised and say that they have never received such a report before. Penelope asks if they mean to tell her she's wrong. They hesitantly answer with a negative, when suddenly the girl announces that there are 2 apocalypses nearby. Suddenly, they all notice someone attacking nearby. Penelope immediately orders them to gather everyone with the priest, but her subordinates say that they are not ready for anything yet. They report that even if they gather everyone now, they won't have nearly enough people. One of them adds that, in that case, Apocalypse will simply wipe them off the face of the earth. Suddenly, Penelope punches the nearest wall with all her might. She asks since when did their own lives become so dear to them. The girl says that she will go with them so that no one dies today. She believed that people should consider it a blessing to have the chance to kill these vile apocalypses. Allowing those with weak faith to destroy themselves was an option, but she couldn't do it. The girl understood that she had to protect this place and all these people. She intended to do this in the name of her late friend Renegar. Jael remarks that he should probably commend the man for still being alive. He gives him credit for fighting quite well. Renegar reveals that he is curious to see how long his opponent can maintain this arrogant attitude. He asks if he will continue like this once he cuts off his head. After this, the guy attacks the one standing opposite him, and he tries to repel the attack. No matter how hard Jael tries, he fails this time, and Renegar manages to wound him. He places his foot on it and asks how his opponent feels. The boy wonders what it would be like to meet death at the hands of a man he despised so much. Apocalypta suddenly smiles and says that it is quite funny. He asks if Karina will be happy if he kills him. Renegar, perplexed, reminds that the girl wanted to kill him. Jael says happily that she wanted to do it herself. He says that no matter how hard the guy tries, he will not win Karina's heart, because she is not like the other apocalypses. The guy says that a person's short life cannot contain their endless agony. Jael suddenly goes silent, and then reports that there are people nearby. This distracts Renegar, and Apocalypse manages to escape his grasp. He evaporates with the words that he will still retreat for today. Apocalypta warns that the next time they meet, he will kill a man. Renegar realizes that he has let his guard down, and his opponent has managed to escape. He decides to help Karina, when suddenly he hears a familiar voice. The guy turns around and sees a frightened Penelope in front of him. As a child, when the girl woke up, she noticed an open door and went to it, calling Riley to her. She says she wants to play toys with Rodri. Opening the door even further, Penelope excitedly asks what happened to the princess from the fairy tale they read yesterday. Suddenly, she notices in front of her a pile of corpses of people dear to her. She didn't understand why everyone was dead if Dafin was the clan chosen by the gods. Suddenly, a living priest approaches her and tells her that this is the reason why the girl is here. He says that she was not born, but rather simply appeared. Suddenly, he is pierced by red claws, causing him to die on the spot. An unknown person asks her to remember that she is destined to become a great person. The priests whisper among themselves about the child who was found on the altar, lying unharmed on many swords. One of them reminds that she remained completely unharmed after the apocalypse's attack. Suddenly, a boy approaches Penelope, asking if what those people said was true. He reports that, apparently, the girl was the same as him. She asks if he will disappear like the others and die soon. The girl hesitantly asks if he will stay by her side. Smiling, Renegar extends his hand to her. He says that he will be with her and that the truth will not die. They joined hands, and it was at that moment that the boy gave her his promise. It lasted exactly 15 years until Renegar's untimely death, as written in the novel. Penelope suddenly rushes in tears to her, as it turns out, living friend. She says she really thought he was dead. Continuing to cry bitterly, the girl repeats that she thought he was no longer there. She reports that absolutely everyone told her that he was dead, but she did not believe it until the very end. Penelope was glad that she was right, and also that he was standing in front of her right now. She suddenly asks worriedly why he has that expression on his face, after which she assumes that he is not happy to see her. He says hesitantly that he is very glad to meet her. The guy thanks her for being able to wait for him. She opens her arms, hoping to hug her old friend again. Renegar steps away, asking her to wait a couple of minutes. He says that he urgently needs to help someone. The guy comes up to Karina and asks if she is okay. He presses his ear to her chest and notices that she has a heartbeat. He was glad that the apocalypses were at least somewhat similar to people. Chiron suddenly crawls up to them, asking if they have forgotten about him. He angrily tells the guy to go to his mistress, which surprises the man. The snake angrily announces that he left Karina and went to hug another girl. Renager says that this is not at all what he thought, to which Charon responds that he intends to tell his mistress everything as soon as she wakes up. Suddenly, Penelope calls out to him, and the guy turns his attention to her. She asks in a trembling voice what he is doing. The girl reminds him that this is Apocalypse, and he shouldn't help her. Renager reveals that she saved his life, and that she no longer belongs in the tower. Penelope says that she already knows this girl very well, like everyone else. She adds that his interlocutor must also be well aware of her. The girl recalls how Karina, on that very day, while killing the last living priest, asked her to remember that she was destined to become a great person. He glances at the sleeping woman again, when suddenly all the priests standing nearby take up their swords. Penelope menacingly announces that she must kill this Apocalypse immediately. Renager suddenly blocks her path and asks her to stop. He says that if it weren't for Karina, he would already be dead. The guy asks if Penelope wants him dead. She wonders how he can even say something like that. The girl recalls that she was very worried about him and missed him incredibly. She assumes that her friend was simply bewitched by this Apocalypse. Screaming, she asks why he is protecting her if he is not. Renager sighs heavily and asks the girl to return, saying that they will talk later. He says they just finished the battle, and right now they need to focus on healing. The guy approaches one of the priests, and he asks what about Apocalypta. Renager says he vouches for her, then asks if the people of Latham will object. The priest asks the boy to follow him, intending to escort him to the main temple. Chiron announces that he has changed his mind about telling Karina that he saw him with another girl. Renager reminds that it was not he who rushed to hug. Suddenly, a frightened Penelope calls out to him again. She asks how he can leave like that if he knows that she was so worried about him. The guy doesn't answer her and just turns away. He walks towards the temple, never turning back, no matter how much the girl calls him. Saladin runs quickly to the window, realizing how much he hates the tower. Despite her restoration, she was exactly the same as she had been 3 years ago. His blanket was already wet, which made him think that sleeping outside in the leaves was better than this. He didn't understand why his brother needed to make the tower as poorly ventilated as it had been 3 years ago. The guy remembers that he already told Jael that if he was going to rebuild everything, he had to make improvements. He thinks about it and understands perfectly well that it was connected with Karina. His brother wanted to drag the girl back to the tower to force her to relive her past over and over again, watching her fall into despair. This was Jael's idea of true love. Saladin believed that if his brother was going to go completely crazy, he shouldn't drag others into it. In fact, he really wanted his sister to be happy. He understood that he himself did not fully understand what happiness was. But this did not stop him. The guy wanted Karina to smile, just like he smiled when he saw her. He assumes that Jael has already found the girl, after which he asks himself if she will come to the tower voluntarily. Saladin knew perfectly well that she would never smile at them after this. Karina never smiled at them and always looked at them with an expression of disgust. She even did this when she looked at herself in the mirror. The guy wasn't surprised that she deliberately lost the first divine war and killed their father. Saladin suddenly thinks joyfully that he is the only one who cares about Karina and who knows such details. Suddenly, he notices burgundy magic approaching him through the window. She instantly flies into the tower, and a weak Jael appears on the floor. He coughs up blood, not yet showing any signs of life. Saladin asks indifferently if he is dead, and then asks if Karina did this to him. He reminds that he already told his brother not to mess with her because she is strong enough. The wounded man suddenly opens his eyes and looks menacingly at his brother, which does not frighten the latter at all. Saladin realizes how strange this is, because even though Karina is strong, she shouldn't be able to compete with Jael. He carefully tries to find out what happened in the end. The guy sniffs and suddenly smells Latham. He asks in fear how this could have happened if his brother was going to look for Karina. Saladin, without stopping for a moment, asks again why his brother smells of Latham. Jael tells him with displeasure that their sister was with a man from Latham. The younger one's eyes widen, and he asks how this happened and why their sister was with him. He begins to shake his brother and asks him not to fall asleep, but to answer him. Suddenly, Jael grabs his arm and tells him to shut up, then tells him that if he says another word, he will kill him. Saladin, slightly frightened, lets the elder go. He guiltily asks where Karina is now. The girl sleepily opens her eyes, and the first thing she asks herself is where she is. Chief Sven reports that he is very glad to see that the boy has returned alive. He remarks that he should be reprimanded for bringing Apocalypse with him. Renegar, after a short silence, reminds her that she saved his life. The man says she is an enemy who slaughtered their clan. The guy repeats again that if it weren't for Karina, he would already be dead. After a short pause, he asks whether it would be better if he died. Headmaster Sven says that he hid Apocalypse for him, because if the clan finds out that the guy is with her, they will condemn him. He asks why the guy says such things then. The man adds that he also kept the reason for his survival a secret, and announced that he bravely fought off numerous enemies and survived. He reports that Renegar is now extolled to the skies, and all their followers offer prayers of thanksgiving. Sven says that he is also very grateful that the boy came back alive. He adds that, in addition to this, he gives thanks to their god, Latham. After a short silence, he announces that Apocalypse cannot remain in the temple. Sven says that allowing such filth to defile Latham is blasphemy that will anger their god. He says he believes Renegar can handle it. The guy glances at the mark on his palm, left behind by the agreement he made with Karina. He suddenly says that the boss hid Karina not only for his sake. Renegar reports that the man is simply worried that if he, the wielder of the sacred sword, were to become embroiled in scandal, it could weaken Lathium's unity. He asks what Sven will do if he refuses. The man notes out loud that the guy has changed a lot. He says he still remembers the day he found him innocently playing with a sword. The chapter suggests that it was Apocalypse that changed him. He reminds her that she is a monstrous creature that harbors a snake, so she is quite dangerous. Renegar angrily asks the head not to judge Karina so rashly. His interlocutor asks how close they are, since the guy allows himself to call her by her first name. The man reports that if anyone else saw him, they would suspect that their Lathium symbol had fallen for Apocalypse's tricks. He says suspicion will ultimately lead to death. Sven informs that if Renegar does not deal with their enemy, he himself will end up on the executioner's block. The boy recalls that there was a time when he, too, believed that the blue light itself was the highest truth. He reminds them that God told them not to kill anyone. Renegar asks whether executing someone simply because he went against doctrine is not a violation of his word. He says the head has no authority to decide who lives and who dies. The man suddenly announces that if he continues to spew blasphemies, he will not hold back. The guy notes that Sven apparently already knew everything, considering he didn't ask about the change in his hair color. He asks why he didn't tell him that the holy sword holds the souls of its previous owners, and that he too will lose his life force and die. Suddenly, the guy, using the sacred sword, cuts the leader's staff in half. He says that he wanted to remain a good child who would listen to his words like before. But this is no longer possible. As he leaves, Renegar says that if the man tries to use his powers against him again, he won't hold back either. He looks out the window and realizes that the people who were waiting for him simply wanted an idol that would serve their own interests. The guy closes his eyes and realizes that he misses Karina very much. The man finishes doing his daughter's hair and shows her the result. He puts his hands on her shoulders and tells her that he loves her very much. The father notices that it turned out a little crooked and decides to tie it differently. He suddenly throws a ribbon around the girl's neck and pulls it tight. The man seems to be enchanted and says that his happiness lies only in alcohol. The daughter suddenly jumps up and runs out of the room, when suddenly she trips and falls down the stairs. She didn't understand if this was because his business had failed and they had suddenly become poor. The girl wondered where her father's love had suddenly gone. Back then, she believed that something that once existed could not just disappear. Now, she could no longer believe in something that no longer existed. She believed that love turns to nothing when faced with misfortune. Karina wakes up in a cold sweat, realizing that it happened 28 years ago, and now it has returned to her in her dreams. She gave up her past life because it was a mess, but she never expected to emerge into an even worse world. The girl understands that this life will soon come to an end. She decides that she will do it immediately on the day of the fall of the apocalypse. Chiron suddenly crawls up to her, distracting her from her thoughts. He asks how the girl feels and if she has any pain. Karina irritably asks where they are. She suddenly realizes that they are in the Temple of Latham. The snake confirms her guess, and she immediately squeezes it in her hand even tighter. The girl asks how he could poison her during the battle and send her here. Chiron tells her that if she had continued fighting there, she would have been in a much worse situation than she is now. She wonders why, of all places, he chose this one. He sheepishly admits that he was afraid her condition would worsen if they went somewhere else. Karina understood that the snake was right, that she was not in the best shape. She wasn't sure she could defeat Jail, and this time she was just lucky. The girl realizes that it will be dangerous to continue according to the plan, given that they do not know when they will be able to meet her older brother again. She asks the pet what happened to Renegar in jail. Kiran happily reports that the man from Latham has won. He suddenly corrects himself and says that it looks more like Apocalypse simply retreated. Karina recalls that in the original story, the true wielder of the Holy Sword was as strong as Jail. She understands that if Renegar is so strong without having fully absorbed the weapon's power, then they have a chance. The snake says that then the priests of Latham arrived, and with them appeared the girl leader Daphin. The girl asks in surprise if he is talking about Penelope now. Chiron is amazed that she already knows her name, and then confirms her guess. He smirks and reveals that while Karina was unconscious, Penelope took the opportunity to hug Renegar. He says he promised not to tell, but it just slipped out. The girl suddenly reminds him sadly that there is nothing between her and Renegar. The snake indignantly asks if she has feelings for him. She says that it doesn't change anything, because once she leaves here, they will probably never meet again. Chiron, keeping the intrigue alive, asks if she really thinks so. He reminds her that the girl cannot defeat Jail, but if Renegar joins her, they will have a chance, and also adds that the guy is head over heels in love with her. The snake says that if she expresses a desire to be with him, he will drop everything and rush over immediately. He clarifies that she should use this to her own advantage. Karina smiles and understands that her pet trusts this man, since he decided to team up with him to put her to sleep. She points out that it's quite a clever idea, so she's not at all offended. The girl suddenly says that she doesn't trust human hearts. She informs him that Renegar's feelings will not last forever. In her opinion, love disappears in the face of misfortune. It disappears, and no matter how hard they try to bring it back, everything is in vain. She believed that those who chase lost love are doomed to die. Chiron, frowning, asks if she is afraid that Renegar's feelings will change. The girl looks at him in surprise, realizing that the snake is right. She suddenly tells him that this is not true at all. He says that even though her body has grown, her mind is still like that of a child. Karina blushes slightly and looks away. The snake asks what will happen if Renegar refuses to become a priest. He wonders if she would trust him if the guy became faithful only to her. The girl understands that in this case, this will prevent the betrayal she is worried about on the part of the guy, because according to the harsh rules of the apocalypse, betrayal will mean death. She says she has no desire to think about things that haven't happened yet. Chiron asks if she is avoiding the question, and she tells him to stop. He asks her to at least allow Renegar to heal her. The snake menacingly informs them that they need to deal with what has already happened. Karina realizes that if her healing ability had worked, her hand would have returned to normal by now. She says she was going to do it anyway, even without his words. Chiron announces that he is going to go look for something to read for the next few days, and the girl is surprised by the amount of time he gave. He explains that he has no intention of leaving this place until she is completely healed. Karina jokingly says that she will leave the snake here so that he will deal with everything himself. She says that she promises to stay here for only 2 days, no more. The snake sighs heavily and agrees to her condition. He says he is willing to do this only on the condition that she does not refuse treatment during this time. The girl asks if he really thinks she would do that. She decides to use Renegar, and if it bothers her so much, she can make him part of the apocalypse. Karina realizes that it would be better to leave with a fully healed body. She was unclear why all this bothered her so much. She looks at the painting of the Knight of Latham and notices that he looks very much like Renegar. Suddenly, the object of her concerns enters the room with a tray of food. He says that he is very glad to see her here. Karina suddenly realizes that the guy shines even brighter than that painting. She asks if it's strange for her to be here. Renegar explains that, as far as he knows, she likes to do her own thing. He says he was worried that she would wake up and leave right away. The guy reminds her that she was unconscious for 3 days and asks if she is okay. Suddenly, he receives a negative answer, which surprises him greatly. The girl playfully says that she is in a lot of pain. Suddenly, Chiron says that she is just being dramatic, and she asks him to go back to reading his book. Karina wonders if they will break their oath now that they have reached Latham. Renegar says, frightened, that he will keep his promise. She asks if he is disappointed. The girl asks him to share his thoughts, after which she says that perhaps she will be generous enough to support this idea. She wanted him to tell her straight out if he wanted to commit himself to her for life. Whether she would actually follow Karan's plan was another question. The guy says he will accept if she decides to leave Latham. He suddenly gets down on his knees and asks her not to leave him. Karina didn't expect such a reaction from him at all. She tells him that she is ready to discuss it in 2 days. The girl says that for now he must take care of her. She extends her hand to him and tells him that it hurts. Karina asks the guy to lick the palm she offers him. She didn't understand why all this calmed her down so much. Renegar asks if he can kiss her. After a short silence, he clarifies that this will be done for the sake of healing. She reminds him that he has never asked this before. The girl tells him that he can act and do whatever he wants. Sven replays his last conversation with Renegar in his head. He recalls his words that executing someone just because he went against doctrine is a violation of God's word. The guy said that the head has no authority to decide who lives and who dies. The man looks at his palm and realizes that he is already quite old. He realizes that he stands on the edge of life and that he is destined to soon join the gods. He was worried that the war with Apocalypse was not yet over, and that Renegar, who he thought would be the next leader, had changed. He looks out the window and notices his people chatting casually with each other. The man hears how often Renegar's name comes up in their conversation. He mentally asks the guy why their followers respect him so much. The head worked hard on this for a long time and achieved this specific result. He understands that he cannot leave everything as it is, but it was unclear to him how he could get out of this situation. Sven realizes that Renegar's popularity is growing rapidly. If he were executed for conspiring with Apocalypse, it would lead to disillusionment with him and distrust of Latham. It was clear that if they left things as they were, there would be a huge backlash. The man turns around and suddenly notices Ahin Dafin, Penelope's closest confidant. He reports that he entered because the door was open, after which he notes that the leader was apparently so concentrated that he did not hear the knock. Suddenly, the guy adds that he has been at the door exactly since Renegar was here. Sven notes that he didn't even know that eavesdropping was one of his hobbies. Ahin reports that the wind can wander wherever it pleases. The man asks him to skip this conversation and asks what the person who entered wants. He says he heard that Penelope was leaving, and then asks why he didn't do the same. The guy says that he was really going to leave, taking the place of the head. He adds that Penelope's condition is not very good, so they will stay a little longer. Akin sums it up and says that Renegar has finally returned, and in perfect condition. He notes that considering the monster from Apocalypse to be his savior is absurd. The head agrees with him, but reminds him that this matter concerns only Latham, and Daphne has no right to interfere. The guy says that Sven probably knows perfectly well that he is deeply in love with Penelope. Akin's strange obsession was so well known that word even reached Latham. Penelope happily told the guy that Renegar was the first person who made her feel that she was not alone in her destiny. She told him straight out that she loved the guy and that she was going to tell him about it. During one of the battles, she revealed that she planned to confess to him after the battle was over. When they had an important meeting, Ahin said that the Battle of Kuhiran was of decisive importance. He said that Apocalypse is a tough opponent, but he believes that he and the alliance of Daphne and Latham can defeat them. The guy noted that they would need to send a very strong priest. Akin suddenly pointed at Renegar and announced that it was he who would go to battle. That day, he thought it was the end, but somehow the wielder of the holy sword survived. The guy says that his loved one is suffering because of Renegar. He asks the leader to just imagine how angry he is right now. Akin reports that he could help Sven. The man asks, frightened, what exactly he means by this help. A member of the Dafin clan wonders what will happen if word spreads that Renegar, the son of the sea god, and next in line for leadership, has abandoned the god's teachings. He notes that other priests will probably be quite pleased. The chief angrily remarks that he shouldn't say such things. He pauses briefly and assumes the boy knows how much he cared about Renegar. Akin knew this very well, because Sven was so worried about him that he censored his every move and interfered in his affairs, literally treating him like a puppet. He understood that if the boy had deviated even slightly from the will of his elder, he would have been immediately punished. Dafin's follower almost envied him because he dreamed of taking care of Penelope in the same way. Sven reveals that this is precisely why he cannot ignore the change in Renegar's heart. He assumes that this apocalypse, the snake girl, simply deceived him with a cunning plan. Akin suddenly remarks that if this is true, then the guy should be executed immediately. The leader adds that if Renegar does kill Apocalypta, it will be as if nothing had happened. The guy looks at him angrily and asks if this means that the owner of the Holy Sword has one last chance. He says that he didn't expect the man to have such a soft heart. Akin notes that the leader apparently truly cared for him like a son. He suddenly pauses and suggests that the real reason is that finding a new owner of the sacred sword turned out to be not so easy. Sven angrily yells at him not to jump to conclusions about what's going on in Latham. The guy notes that, apparently, the recent news has not yet reached the head. He reports that rumor has it that there is a boy in the Sakana temple who has received Lathium's blessing. The man reminds that this temple was conquered by Apocalypse 3 years ago. Akin answers him that the light of God shines everywhere. He says that Latham's followers, as it turns out, exist there too. The guy asks if he can take on the case if the rumors turn out to be true. He thinks for a moment and then says that this boy's name is Kashet Latham. Their hands squeeze each other tighter, when suddenly Karina breaks the kiss. She asks how the fight with Jail went. Renegar becomes slightly sad and promises that next time he will do everything better. The girl asks in surprise if he will fight again if she tells him, to which he receives confirmation. She reminds him that he could die if he does this. The guy promises that everything will be fine, because as soon as they break the oath, his death will not affect her. He kisses her hand and adds that he will not die. Renegar says that he wants to live with her under the same sky. The leader steps aside and announces that he plans to persuade the owner of the Holy Sword. Ahin sighs heavily and sadly says that it will be as he wishes. Suddenly, Sven adds that if Renegar still refuses to listen to him, he will leave it to his interlocutor. The guy extends his hand to him and says that he will take care of it. They shake hands, and Ahin promises that no one will notice. Chiron remarks with displeasure that they keep forgetting that he is still here. He climbs up Renegar's shoulder, which greatly frightens him. Karina indignantly asks why he doesn't just leave. The snake remarks that she does not respect the ancient monster, to which the girl replies that they were born at the same time. He reminds her that he has been sleeping for thousands of years, so technically, his age is no comparison to hers. Karina thinks with displeasure that if her previous life were taken into account, she would be over 50. She tells Renegar that they should stop, as her mood has just been ruined. The guy suddenly throws her back onto the bed, not letting her leave. He reports that no mood is required for treatment. As he gets closer, he notices that he could have done a little more than necessary. Karina suddenly pokes him in the forehead and asks him to calm down. She, getting up, asks what happened during the 3 days that she was unconscious. The girl turns around and notices that her interlocutor looks unwell. She assumes that the boss gave him a dressing down for bringing Apocalypta here. Karina playfully asks if she should kill Sven for him. Suddenly, the guy becomes very cheerful and even smiles slightly. She asks him what made him laugh so much, and he tells her that it sounds just like her. Renegar says that in the sacred temple, where the god watches, only she could say something like that. The girl asks if he is trying to say that she is blaspheming. He remarks that he was about to tell her that this is exactly why he likes her. The guy touches her thigh, when suddenly Chiron hits his hand, noting with displeasure that he will not allow such a thing, even if he dies. Renegar reports that he felt they had become quite close. The snake asks him not to say such dirty things, because he is a simple man. He notes that as long as he is Latham, he can never be Karina's partner. The boy sadly asks what he can do about the fact that he was born like this. Karina understands that blaming someone for its existence seems more blasphemous. Chiron indignantly tells the girl that he is making fun of him again and again. She asks him to stop and says that she will choose her own partner. Karina reminds that they will leave in exactly 2 days anyway. She asks the snake not to waste energy on senseless quarrels. Chiron suddenly says that he will not leave her the same way as Renegar, who cheated on her. Renegar indignantly reminds him that he promised not to tell this, and the snake jokes that he has a forked tongue, so he can lie. The guy asks her to let him explain what happened, after which he says that this is his childhood friend. Karina says that since she is so devoted to him, she probably doesn't like that Apocalypta is here. She wonders what Penelope said about her. The girl asks if she ordered him to kill her. Renegar falls silent, realizing that this really happened. Karina wonders if he really plans to kill her. The guy suddenly becomes sad and kneels in front of her. He remarks that it would be much harder for him than protecting her, and then states that it is something he cannot bring himself to do. The girl strokes his head and, smiling, says that this is good. She explains that she also does not want to die by someone's hand. Renegar had never known before that a smile could be as cold as a blade. He began to wonder if that blade had actually been pointed at him. The guy walks down the corridor, remembering the girl's words that it was time for him to go. She said that 3 whole days had passed, and people were probably looking for him, so it would be a problem if they came here looking for him. Renegar realizes that if he said those people don't matter, that would be a problem. He remembers Chiron's words that as long as the guy is Latham, he will not be able to be Karina's partner. The wielder of the Holy Sword asks himself whether the snake will allow him to stay with the girl if he stops being Latham. He looks down at the floor and wonders what he should do. Suddenly, unfamiliar voices call out to the guy. He turns around and notices a couple of guys who announce that they are new acolytes who have recently joined the main temple. They say that they had previously heard that Renegar had returned, and that is why they wanted to see him. The guys ask if it's true that he won the battle with Apocalypta. The wielder of the Holy Sword freezes, finally learning what story is being told to other people. He suddenly announces that he didn't actually win. Renegar says he simply escaped faster than everyone else and returned alive. He asks if that's all they wanted to ask, and then leaves. The guys immediately start whispering among themselves, discussing the unrealistic expectations of the celebrity. In the past, Renegar had felt some sense of responsibility towards these views, but now it was no longer like that. He recalls Karina's questions about why Latham kills Apocalypta and people who believe in the same god. She said that the Holy Sword is exactly the same, because it clings to its owner, sucking out his life force until death. The boy realizes that he can no longer blindly trust Latham. He found it unbearable to have to pretend to be a devout priest time and time again. Suddenly, he meets a familiar face on his way, causing his eyes to widen. Karina turns to her pet and asks why he was asking their mutual friend such questions. She reminds him that he said he didn't like it, because Renegar is Latham's man with divine energy, after which she reminds him that he doesn't usually say things like that. The girl assumes that he plans to put the guy below her. The snake notes that her sharpness is unmatched. She asks if Karan wants him to join her, to which he replies, yes. Karina steps aside and says that she is not at all sure. She remembers the passionate gaze, the blind emotions, and the desperate sighs of Renegar, and asks herself if these sincere feelings will last forever. The girl reminds herself that love evaporates in the face of misfortune. She says that having a guy by her side wouldn't be a disadvantage. Karina pauses and says that she doesn't want to force him to choose. The snake angrily reminds her that he is one of those who will come running, wagging his tail at one word from her. She asks him to stop, moving closer to the window. The girl says that he also has his own human life. Suddenly, Karina notices something unusual in the window. It was a picture that was exactly like the scene where the main characters met. She looks at Penelope's appearance and realizes that she looks like a jasmine flower turned into a human. Renegar's beauty next to her was a given. This scene was like something out of a painting. Karen says worriedly that this is the same girl from Defen, and his mistress says that she already knows this. She notices that the main character looks a little different than before. Karina suddenly sees them taking each other's hands. The snake immediately sounds the alarm, concerned about the guy's behavior. The girl notes that she feels a little irritated. Suddenly, she spreads her wings and invites Karan to take a little walk. Penelope, confidently holding the hand of the man standing opposite her, does not take her eyes off him. She says that they clearly have something to talk about. Renegar asks her to do it another time, because he is a little busy now. The girl reminds him that she waited 3 days, after which she says that he will not be able to avoid her. She says that this day brings back memories for her, and adds that she knew that he would return here someday. The guy asks what she wanted to talk about. Penelope reminds that they were together for 15 years. She says that despite being from different clans, they have spent more time together than anyone else. The girl notes that she respects him very much, which he should have known perfectly well himself. They were the only ones who appeared in this world out of nowhere. They had no one to rely on but each other. For Renegar, it really was like having a little sister. Penelope reminds him of the time she was playing in the mountains and fell off a cliff. Even when everyone said that she was dead, the guy did not give up and continued to look for her until he eventually found her. She reports that she has been experiencing exactly the same thing all this time. The girl says she gave everything to find out if he was still alive. She says that she eventually took the onerous position of head and used that power to search for him with all her might. Penelope suddenly asks how he could protect Apocalypta. It was here that they return to the same conversation. She asks if he has any idea how many people Apocalypse has killed. The girl begins to list the people close to her who ended up dead. She asks in tears how he could do this. Renegar says he missed her too. He says that right before he almost died there, the first person he thought of was her. The guy wondered if she would cry without him, and how she would live after that. He adds that at the same time, he had to accept it, because dying in battle for God was an honorable fate. Renegar says that just when he was dying, Karina appeared before him. He says that he begged Apocalypta to save and protect him. Observing his interlocutor's reaction, he asks about her assumptions about the reason for his behavior. The guy admits that he wanted to see her again, the head and all the priests of Lotham. He says he didn't want to die like this at all. Renegar recalls her words about how she wanted him to stay alive. He wonders how she feels about seeing him alive, after he begged Apocalypta to keep him alive. The girl asks him, disappointed, why he did this. Penelope reminds him that if he died, he would end up with God, which was his purpose in life. She wonders why he begged Apocalypta to spare his life. Renegar, smiling, asks whether he should have died then. He says that, in that case, Penelope is no different from others. The guy understands that now he incredibly strongly wants to see Karina. Suddenly, Apocalypse flies up to them and approaches Renegar. She says she hates it when people touch her things. Penelope, after a long time, saw a face that she should never forget. Karina is surprised that the main character has already heard about her, after which she remarks that she is apparently a real celebrity. In fact, the girl was incredibly scared, because earlier she tried not to get involved with the person standing opposite her. She asks herself if she should at least put on a friendly smile now. Renegar suddenly pulls her towards him and asks why she came here. He excitedly reminds her that her body has not yet fully recovered. The girl doesn't understand who he is to think that he can help her. She says she just really wanted to see him. Renegar blushes and admits that he also really wanted this. Suddenly, Penelope interrupts their conversation, asking what they are doing. She wonders what he's doing with Apocalypta right in front of her. The girl says that if he doesn't kill her right now, she will do it. Renegar covers Karina behind his back and asks his childhood friend to stop. Apocalypta realizes that the guy can't tell her to stay out of his way because he's too worried about how she'll react. Penelope asks him to step aside, getting closer and closer to them with each step. The holy sword wielder reminds her that he already told her to stop. The girl uses her power and takes a fiery sword in her hands, ready to attack at any moment. As the daughter of the goddess of war and one who made a pact with the king of the fire spirits, Penelope's power was immense. In Karina's current state, it would be difficult to fight, so she needed to avoid that outcome. The protagonist reminds that she is the head of Defen, with Apocalypta standing right in front of her. She says she will never let go of her enemy. Penelope swings her sword when suddenly her attack is blocked by Renegar. He asks if she can even hear him. The guy again reminds her that he asked her to stop. He tells her that if she doesn't stop, he will have to attack her. Penelope looks behind her friend and suddenly notices Karina's satisfied smile. She asks if he is really ready to attack her right now. The girl angrily asks if this means he is ready to kill her. Renegar says he wouldn't do that to his only family. He pauses and adds that he will not do this only if she stops attacking Karina. Penelope smirks and asks if he likes this apocalypse. She wonders if this is the reason he couldn't kill her and brought her here. The guy turns around worriedly at Karina, wanting to see her reaction, but she makes it clear to him that other people are approaching them. Suddenly, the head and other priests join their conversation. Renegar asks if the girl left through the main exit, and she says she flew out the window. She says she's spread her wings and added a little sparkle to them for the first time in a long time. The guy laughs nervously, trying to figure out what to do now. Sven asks what he is doing inside the temple, after which he tells him to put down his sword immediately. Karina asks the person standing next to her to simply follow the leader's orders for now. The holy sword wielder asks if he should really do this, to which he receives a positive answer. Apocalypta says that this way, when he actually kills someone he doesn't like, no one will suspect him. The guy is surprised that she can still joke at such a moment. The girl approaches the leader and notes that they have met before. She says hello and asks how he is doing. Karina notes that this is their first meeting since the Divine War. The priests are outraged that Apocalypse, who has killed hundreds of their clan members, dares to stand before them. The leader asks his subordinates to stop, blocking their path. He orders the girl to return to her chambers immediately. Karina wonders if the common man really just got angry at her. She spreads her wings and rises into the sky. The girl reports that it's getting annoying, then says that they should understand how patient she is right now. She says that otherwise, most of the people present here would have been dead long ago. Karina notes that it would be very similar to a divine war. She glances at the angry Penelope, realizing that she still hasn't backed down. As expected from the main character, Apocalypta decides to stop provoking her here. She tells Renegar that she is flying away, after which she asks him to have fun with the old man. The girl only did this because the current head of Defeng was truly terrible. The leader understands that even in his prime, he would not have been able to defeat her. It was the Apocalypses who instilled such immeasurable fear in them. Sven asks the guy to come with him, saying that they need to have a serious talk. Renegar glances at his childhood friend. He notices how intently and aggressively she looks after Karina as she flies away. The guy remembers her words that he still had to die to be with God. He makes a decision that he will follow the one who truly wants him to live. The owner of the Holy Sword asks to end this as soon as possible, because he would like to rest. Suddenly, Penelope grabs him by the sleeve, not allowing him to take a single step forward. She tearfully asks him not to leave. The girl reminds that they still have something to talk about. Renegar suddenly says that there is nothing more to say, denying the words she said. He leaves, announcing that there will be nothing more in the future either. The guy puts his palm to his chest, first looking at the mark left by the contract. He understands that he cannot afford to lose Karina. After some time, the snake notices that she has caused quite a stir. Karina says that in that case she would have killed someone and felt satisfaction, which did not happen. He asks if she said before that she would not kill people anymore. The girl reports that these particular ones are an exception. Chiron says it's not just about them, then asks if she takes him seriously. She remembers the scene where the main characters meet and feels irritated. When she saw them together in person, she only made things worse. The girl hoped that their separation would make her feel better, but instead, it made her feel even worse. She remembers Penelope's face, without a hint of doubt in her feelings, her determination to follow her destiny, and the piety of one who serves her God. All this stemmed from a desire to protect what was dear to her. It was the Dyphon clan, and freedom, and the loved ones who cared for her. All this was something that Karina never had. This was quite natural, since their roles were different from the very beginning. After overcoming short-term difficulties, she, as the main character, was met with a happy ending surrounded by peace and joy. Karina was destined for nothing but destruction, trapped between carnage, revenge, and war. She didn't understand if she could ever become the main character of her own story. The girl says out loud that this all irritates her too much, and Karan thinks that she spoke this way about his words of concern that he told her all this time, for which she apologizes. Karina asks him to repeat it, and the snake informs her that she must be careful with the head of the Dyphon clan. She understands that absolutely everyone, whoever they are, thinks about Penelope. Karan asks if she already knew that the main character is the daughter of the goddess of war. He asks why she didn't tell him about it earlier, and the girl says that she forgot. The snake asks her to be careful and not to interfere unnecessarily, as she did today. Karina thinks that Penelope in the original story was really strong. What bothered her was that this should have happened after she confirmed Renegar's death and woke up. Not now. She asks the snake if he thinks Penelope is that strong. Chiron shakes his head and gives a negative answer. He says that the main character became the leader at a young age, so now she is just an inexperienced child. The girl wonders why she should be afraid of her then. The snake reminds that she was born from the body of Medusa, who was cursed by the goddess of war. He says that the power Penelope inherited from the goddess of war could affect Karina in unpredictable ways. Any attack could be devastating, and in the worst case, she could receive a wound that even her healing abilities could not heal. In the original story, Karina, who was portrayed as extremely strong, ended up dying easily and without much resistance once she met the protagonist. Then the girl assumed that the author of the novel was simply tired and in a hurry, but it turns out there was something more. Karina suggests that she has gone too far. Karan reports that in Renegar's place, everything would have been different. He says that divine power can only be compared with exactly the same power, after which he reminds that the guy has already awakened. The snake notes that watching him lose control while trying to protect the girl was quite funny. He asks again if Karina really doesn't intend to take the guy with her. That day, she saved Renegar because she didn't want to become Penelope's target. Now she found herself in direct opposition to her. It was all just because she saved the guy with her own hands. Karina understands that everything will not go as planned, no matter what she does. This novel consoled her when she was hiding from her father. At the time, she had genuinely rooted for Penelope, but now she hated her. The girl envied her because she had everything, and she was destined to get even more. She decides that nothing bad will happen if she takes just one thing from the main character. Karina says that she will ask Renegar to leave with her as soon as he comes to her. The chief says that he asked the guy to come here because he had something important to say. It seemed to him that this was not something that could be discussed in a chapel under the supervision of God. Renegar asks what else they can talk about when less than 3 hours have passed since they finished their first meeting. Sven was frightened by the fact that in such a short time, the boy began to look at him with such arrogance and disrespect. He wonders how close he has become to this snake girl. The boy felt that since Karina had left her life as an apocalypse behind, it would be more appropriate to call her by her real name. However, he had no desire to correct anyone, as the name was too beautiful for those who desperately wanted to absorb her to use. He reports that this apocalypse saved his life, and so it was only natural that he wanted to show her the utmost respect. The guy notes that she is clearly better than all those who want him dead. The leader stands up silently, and after a couple of seconds asks if he wants to ask him anything. He says that he knows about the spirit contained in the sacred sword, and why his hair turned black. The man asks him to listen carefully and not be surprised. Renegar understands that he will not be shocked at all, because he has already heard this story from Chiron. According to his version, the sea god made a deal with the goddess of war to return his life partner, and later hid in the depths of the sea. The boy wondered what Sven was trying to achieve by raising this issue, given his connections with Dafin. The chapter reports that the sea god fell victim to the machinations of ancient monsters and was cursed. Renegar didn't understand what he was talking about if the guy had never heard about it before. The man reminds that the ancient monsters are the ancestors of the apocalypse, so the latter's malice originated from them. He says that the ancient monsters envied the holy and limitless power of the sea god and developed a cunning plan. They decided to collect all the evil and filth in this world, create a vile soul, and place it in a beautiful shell, which they sent to God as a gift. The sincere boy, unaware of their plan, fell in love with this pathetic creature. It was no wonder that such evil and filth could not be hidden by simple beauty. Soon the creature revealed its true nature, raised its sword, and plunged it into the heart of the sea god. Caught in an ambush without armor, he was completely defeated. His screams were loud enough to pierce the heavens, and his blood flowed so profusely that the sea overflowed. Sensing something was wrong, the goddess of war descended to earth and sealed the creature, barely managing to save the wounded one. However, the sea god was so badly wounded that he could no longer remain on earth and was forced to retreat to the heavens. Even in his weakened state, the sea god was concerned about the people left on earth, and the goddess of war decided to help him. She said that he could offer the bloody sword as a sacred relic, for it contained all that he was. This is how they came to possess the sacred sword, but it was very imperfect. As a result, they had no choice but to sacrifice its owners. The chapter reports that they shared the same agony as the sea god, as well as the pain, as if their hearts were being torn apart by a blade. Renegar notices that the narrator's face is filled with sadness, so his words cannot be called a lie. He continues by saying that the first chapter was deeply saddened by these sacrifices, so that after crossing the treacherous mountains, he turned to the goddess of war herself. Falling to his knees, he asked how they could fully inherit the power of the sea god without further sacrifices on the part of the believers. The goddess of war said that it was quite a pity that the soul of impure blood continued to torment him. She told that the jellyfish, an ancient monster that had deceived the sea god, would one day be freed from its fate. The goddess used her power and announced that this monster would be a snake girl. She added that her name will be Karina Apocalypta. Sven again asks the guy to kill his companion. He says that only then will the tragedy end, and tens of thousands of lives will be saved. Renegar recalls the serpent's words that the goddess of war lured the sea god with a lie, took his power and fled, causing the sea god to retreat into the depths of the sea, and has not been seen since. According to the chief, it was quite the opposite, and the evil monster plunged a sword into the heart of the sea god, causing him to retreat to the heavens. The guy doesn't understand who he should trust, and then asks himself if he can really bring himself to kill Karina. Karina tosses and turns in bed, trying unsuccessfully to fall asleep. She notices that Renegar is staying much longer than she thought. Karan states that this is precisely why she should have made her decision earlier. The girl sarcastically asks if she would be worried if it really was as easy as he says. She asks if she should use dragon semblance to escape, reminding him that she used it before after killing her father. The snake suddenly angrily asks her to stop. He reminds her that her body is already weak, and she can't even use such a high level of power. Karina reports that everything should be fine if someone like Saladin can use it without problems. Chiron asks in surprise why she suddenly remembered her brother. The dragon semblance was originally used by Saladin in the novel after he gained the ability through the Hydra's blood. The girl knew that this was a force that used the dragon's power to mentally overcome opponents. Thanks to this, she was able to use it to kill her father. She was unclear whether she should have everything prepared before Renegar arrived. Karina realizes that she feels sorry for Saladin, because if he had such power, his relatives would not have been killed by Luna. Meanwhile, the object of the girl's thoughts follows the trail of the snake's remaining scent, getting closer and closer to her sister. Renegar walks thoughtfully along the corridors of one of the buildings. He asks himself what he needs to do now. Suddenly, he notices familiar priests nearby. This surprises him greatly, because usually the annex was deserted. But now other people were hanging around here. Urka indignantly asks where the owner of the sacred sword has been all this time, if he returned long ago. The guy replies that he just needed to take care of some business. Samuel asks what happened to his hair color, but then asks him not to answer. He suggests that their old friend has been through a lot. The guys notice that their interlocutor looks terrible and ask if everything is okay. Renegar reports that he is doing well, after which he asks what they are doing here. Samuel says his companion felt a strange energy. They explain that the place hasn't been used for a long time, so they came to check it out. The wielder of the holy sword immediately realizes that they were able to determine that Apocalypse is nearby. He reports that he was here just yesterday and there were no problems, so they can go back. Samuel tells his partner that they don't have to worry since they were told everything is fine. Erga indignantly asks if he feels this evil force in the air, and Renegar says that, in that case, he will go in and check it himself. The priest notices that he is behaving very strangely. He asks the wielder of the holy sword to step aside as he prepares to enter the room. Samuel suddenly grabs him by the collar and asks what he's doing. He apologizes to Renegar and says that his friend is unusually irritable today, perhaps because he couldn't sleep. The guy asks if they can go together, saying that they are a little nervous. The Latham symbol decides that since they are trained primarily in healing, he will be able to subdue them if something goes wrong. He says that they can join if they insist. Samuel calmly opens the door, happily noting that Renegar knows how to speak beautifully, unlike Ergi. Suddenly, as they enter the room, they are enveloped in a thick fog of Apocalypse's ominous energy. Erga notes that their friend has apparently really gone crazy. He asks how this can even be called nonsense. Karina fearfully wonders who these people are, thinking that she only released the power so that Renegar would come to her faster. She did everything to avoid complications, but it only made the situation worse. The girl apologizes to her friend, saying that she did not expect him to come with other people. He says everything is fine, noting that he should have warned her about this in advance. Samuel asks in fear what Apocalypse is doing in their temple. Erga informs them that they need to get rid of her immediately. The guy realizes that he should have knocked out these two the moment he opened the door. He couldn't only because he was too distracted by how beautiful Karina was. Now that it came down to it, it seemed like a good option to him to kill them. He suddenly realizes that he is thinking about something completely different, and all he needs to do is knock them out with a pen. Suddenly, Karina stops him, blocking the way to his friends. She tells him that he shouldn't do something so terrible, because he is, after all, a priest. The girl didn't want to use this power until the very end, but now she had no choice. She suddenly uses Dragon's effigy, and the boys fall to the floor, exhausted. Renegar asks what she did. The girl says that she simply erased their memories, and therefore they will not remember anything about today. She notes that, fortunately, fighting is not their specialty, because if they were strong, she could only subdue them and nothing more. The guy says that he had no idea that she had such abilities, because she had never used them before. In fact, Karina really didn't want to use them in front of him. She was afraid that if he found out she could use mental attacks, he might suspect that it had affected him too. It had nothing to do with their oath, but there was a chance that he would indeed get it wrong. Renager suddenly announces that he is worried that the girl has not yet fully recovered. He says that using mental attacks can overstrain her body, so it would be easier to just turn them to stone and kill them. Karina is very surprised that, instead of suspecting, he was worried about her. It was amazing that he thought it would be easier to kill them than to stress her out a little. She hugs him and asks if he will heal her. The girl asks herself why she ever doubted him. She reports that she is truly shocked that the boy would try to harm his fellow priests. Karina happily asks if he did it for her. In fact, she was right. And in order to protect his beloved, Renager was ready to betray the comrades with whom he had spent the last 10 years. Suddenly, the sacred sword falls from his palm and lands on the floor. He recalls that everyone told him to kill in the name of teaching, while Karina, even when she was in trouble, told him not to take lives. The boy asks himself what meaning the ancient legend has now, and what benefit there is from the will of God or the prosperity of Latham. He realizes that this girl is the only one who really matters in his life. Renager kisses her palm and tells her that he wants to be with her. She suddenly says that she was going to tell him exactly the same thing. Karina grabs his hand and asks how about running away together. The girl invites him to escape this evening. Ah-hin, sitting in his office, takes into his palm the magical sphere that has just flown to him. Sharik tells him that Renager drew his sword to protect Apocalypta, and now he is going to betray his god and leave with her. The guy notes that this is getting very interesting. He realizes that today is his last chance if he wants to kill the owner of the Holy Sword. Chiron indignantly asks if the leader of Latham actually said that. He was outraged by the fact that ancient monsters were allegedly trying to harm the sea god. He says they had no bad tendencies, and it is very impudent of Latham to distort history in such a way when they did not even live through those times. Karina, feeling the approaching fatigue from the snake's indignation, asks him to calm down. He suddenly jumps on her and asks how he can even be calm. Chiron says with displeasure that the ancient monsters wanted to live in harmony with the gods. He reports that it was the latter who violated this agreement. Renager, connecting with his beloved, also asks the snake to calm down. Chiron asks if the boy believes Latham's story. In fact, he didn't believe either the snake or Sven. He understood that if he told them that he only trusted Karina, everyone would be furious. The girl suddenly pokes her pet in the cheek and asks him to stop. She wonders if it really matters whether Renager believes him. In fact, she didn't fully believe him either. The original novel didn't mention anything about this at all, and the story was filled with nothing but crazy people. Karina notes that their friend has already decided to follow them and has also given up his position as the priest of Latham. She says that instead of criticizing him, they should praise him for what he has already done. The girl says that everything he has already done for them is an indication that he trusts them more than Latham. The snake notes that the guy, however, still hasn't answered him. He asks what led him to change his worldview so radically, to such an extent that he is even ready to kill his brothers. In reality, nothing has changed, and Renager has simply come to an understanding of what he truly believes in. He says that he just wants to be with Karina, and that's enough for him. The snake asks about his god, and the guy notes that it was this apocalypse that saved him, and not the one he believed in all his life. Renager reveals that he wants Karina to be his god. He wanted her to be someone he could trust completely, even if his life was on the line. The girl is very surprised and notes that she does not really like men who rely on her too much. He sheepishly says that he will keep this in mind. His love for his god was, literally, naive and blind. If this love was directed at a real person, it would have become a big problem. And that is why Karina answered him like that. Chiron asks when exactly they plan to escape. She announces that this evening, under the light of the northern star, they will quietly leave. Suddenly, Renager says that she will need to go first, and he will catch up with her a little later. The girl suggests that he needs to say goodbye to someone. He reports that he has some unfinished business. The guy understood that if he ran away too, no one would turn a blind eye to it. He had no doubt that he and Karina would be persecuted in the name of Latham. Penelope, sitting in her room, suddenly hears a knock on the door. Ahin comes to her, having warned her about his visit. He asks if everything is okay when he sees her sad face. The girl sarcastically says that there is nothing wrong with the fact that Apocalypse lives in their temple, and that Renager went against her. She asks if the guy tried to think with his head before asking something like that. Ahin says that he understands her, because he also did not expect that the owner of the Holy Sword would change so much. He says it's all about that Apocalypse. The guy notes that she is a girl born with the blood of a snake, who seduces and controls people. He reports that apparently Renegar could not help himself. Penelope asks if he really thinks it was Apocalypta who bewitched him. She, bursting into tears, asks if he really has changed so much because of Karina. The guy notes that perhaps when they kill this Apocalypta, Renegar will return to normal life. He asks if she wants to kill her. Akin suddenly corrects himself and asks if they are not obliged to finish off this Apocalypta. Renegar hugs his beloved tightly. He reminds her that she should go ahead, and he will catch up with her a little later. The guy asks her to be more careful, even though she has already recovered enough. Karina recalls his words about having unfinished business. She assumes that Renegar wants to say goodbye to Penelope. Suddenly, the guy pulls her into a kiss, pulling her closer to him. He, moving away, says that now nothing will separate them. The girl realizes that it looks like she worried for nothing. She asks him to calm down, moving aside. Karina informs them that there is not much time left before sunrise, and they should not delay any longer. With these words, she leaves him, spreading her wings. She notes that this is becoming dangerous. Kiran, agreeing, says that the risk of Latham's men following them is quite high, when suddenly the girl says that she is not talking about that. She says that Renegar has become too attached to her. The snake wonders if this is a problem. Karina understands that now she won't be able to leave him. Chiron asks why not turn him into a monster, because then they could be together forever, and the guy would also become stronger. She reminds that she has already said that this is not an option. The girl says that Renegar is a priest who destroys monsters. The snake notes that the guy has already refused this role. Karina is about to object when suddenly someone attacks her. She reflects another stream of magic that suddenly flies at her. The girl takes a closer look and suddenly realizes that her opponent is Penelope herself. She understands that it seems the main character will not let her go so easily. Karina thought that Renegar needed time to sort things out with Penelope, but now it was unclear where he was headed. Sven is puzzled and asks what brought the guy to him at this hour. The wielder of the holy sword, having managed to change his clothes so as not to arouse suspicion, goes deeper into the chapter hall. The man asks if he has made a decision about what they discussed earlier. Renegar wonders if a man like him could find a way to protect Karina. He reports that he still has something to ask. The guy asks how many priests know that the apocalypse lives in the temple. Sven says there are only 5 of them, when suddenly a sacred sword pierces him. Renegar did this because no matter where he ran, Sven would track him down anyway. He reports that he can handle these 5 without any problem. The one who was supposed to die was far from Karina, so the guy had to take revenge on those who sentenced him to death. Renegar says he is unlikely to be upset by the leader's death. He was going to kill the image of the idiot he had been until now. The chief asks how dare he do this to him. The holy sword wielder reminds that this is the question from the man who sent him to his certain death. Sven rushes to the nearest chest and frantically searches for any kind of weapon. The boy wonders if it was really that hard to give him freedom. He asks why the boss can't leave him alone. Renegar says the man ordered him to fight the Apocalypta to the death, while being afraid to even look them in the eye. The leader asks him to stop, saying that he understands everything. He promises that he will create a new position in the temple, especially for him, where he can do whatever he wants. The guy says that the only thing he wants is to protect his life and Karina's life. He says that he doesn't want to lose anything anymore. Suddenly, the door to the hall opens, and everything is filled with the magic of the wind. Akin remarks that he didn't expect the wielder of the holy sword to go so far as to try to kill Sven. He says that it turns out the guy is much braver than he thought. The person entering reminds that quite a lot of time has passed. He glances at the leader and realizes that he has lost consciousness. The guy notes that he could never have imagined that he would betray them. He, drawing his sword, announces that it is time to die. Akin's sword changed its shape depending on his breath. If Renegar wanted to win, he would need the power of the holy sword. Unfortunately, the weapon was reluctant to cooperate with him. It was logical, because from the point of view of the holy sword, he had now become the servant of another god. For him, an alliance based only on human promises had no meaning. Akin suddenly attacks the enemy and manages to wound him. The wielder of the holy sword realizes that he is too slow. Member Dafin notes that these types of fights bring back memories of how they used to spar constantly when they were little. He reminds that the second one always lost to him. Renegar recalls that he was taught to use his power solely to destroy the apocalypse. That's why it never occurred to him to use the power of the holy sword against people. Ahin says that the guy should be grateful for the fact that he occupies a position above his real capabilities, but he still decided to become a traitor. He says that this is exactly why he hates him, because he is an ungrateful bastard. Suddenly, Renegar approaches him and grabs the blade of the other man's sword with his hand. He notes that his opponent clearly hates him for something else. The guy says that he is simply offended because Penelope chose to follow him. Suddenly, Renegar concentrates all his power into his sword and attacks his opponent. Ahin remembers how his beloved ran in tears to the owner of the holy sword. She made repeated attempts to heal even the smallest of his wounds. The girl said that it broke her heart that her powers couldn't heal him. She said that she didn't want a power that would only bring destruction, because it was enough for her to simply protect Renegar. Penelope suggests that if she destroys everything that can hurt him, then no one will be able to harm him again. Ahin slowly raises his head up, turning his gaze towards his opponent. He reports that there is not a drop of honor in him. Renegar asks if he really thinks he could stop him if they fought honorably. He says that in the past, he was held back by certain circumstances. The guy remarks that now it's time for them all to see how hard a dog can bite when let off a leash. Akin realizes that he is lost, because he could not grab the sword with a wounded shoulder. He wonders why he hasn't killed him yet. The guy says that he didn't expect at all that he would become so strong. Member Daifan asks if he sold his soul to Apocalypse to become stronger. Suddenly, the Holy Sword asks them all to be silent. Renegar is very surprised that the weapon suddenly started talking, and even does not reject it. The Holy Sword reports that this despicable minion of Daifan knows no bounds. He wonders how he dares to say something so vile. The weapon asks what Renegar is waiting for, and why he hasn't killed him yet. The guy realizes that nothing has changed, and after the Holy Sword took countless lives, he still has the audacity to consider himself a saint. It was clear that the weapon wanted to take another soul, but Renegar had no time for that now. He asks Akin if he will pursue him if he survives. Member Daifan remarks that his interlocutor has gone crazy since he killed the head of Latham, and now asks that they not hunt him. Renegar says he didn't kill him, although he could have if he hadn't intervened. He says that he just wants Akin to turn a blind eye to all this. The guy says that his plan was to eliminate only Latham's followers, and why run away. He understood that if he killed Ahin, Daphne would not forgive him, and Penelope could even track his last moments. His interlocutor smirks, realizing that the girl doesn't care about him. He notes that he is completely crazy. Ahin wonders if Penelope would care, even if she found out that the love of her life killed him. He says that Renegar gave up absolutely everything just for the sake of Apocalypta. The wielder of the Holy Sword reports that he had nothing to lose. He says that his heart followed the will of God, and his body obeyed the commands of the leader. The guy notes that he has never made a choice on his own. Akin suddenly announces that he had Penelope. His interlocutor notes that he doesn't even have the strength left to be so indignant. Daifan's follower recalls that he had previously said that he had nothing. He says that in fact he was incredibly hungry for what his opponent simply rejected. The guy asks if he really decided to give up everything because of one Apocalypta. He suddenly announces that they can never be together. Akin says that no matter how much he struggles, he will never get what he wants. Suddenly, Renegar grabs him by the collar and sternly tells him to shut up. He notes that no one controls his future anymore. Daifan's follower suddenly clarifies that they cannot be together because this apocalypse is already dead. Suddenly, a loud crash is heard outside, causing all the glass in the hall to shatter into hundreds of pieces. Renegar asks worriedly what happened. Akin notes that it is now too late. He says it's all over for the guy. Karina realizes that it seems like she is slowly dying. Kyron leans over her shoulder, worriedly asking if she is okay. She recalls the snake's words that she would not be able to defeat Chief Daifeng in her current state. He said that Penelope could leave a wound that her healing powers could not heal. Kiran said that even after a partial recovery, Karina is still an easy target. The girl understands that he was right, because usually such a wound would have already healed. But even if Renegar heals her, it will only get worse. It felt like acid eating away at her flesh, and Karina assumed that Penelope was being affected by her attacks in the same way. Unfortunately, it was unclear who would kill Apocalypta if the main character somehow died. The girl sighs heavily and asks herself what she should do. Penelope realizes that her opponent has apparently been deeply hurt. Apocalypta's blood was toxic, and everything it touched turned rotten and black. That is why the girl had to prepare well. She suddenly screams, asking Karina what she is doing. The main character tells her to get out right now and fight her. She wonders if she's trying to avoid her. Suddenly, the girl hears a strange voice next to her. Karina, who appeared behind me, said that she had a couple of questions. She asks why the girl hates her so much. Apocalypta informs that she herself must understand that even with 100 of her people, she could not defeat her. She wonders why the girl went alone then. Penelope says she's not going to play her games. Karina wanted the main character to leave her alone, as she had been too deeply affected by her opponent's last attack. She didn't even have the strength left to break through her divine defense and pierce her neck, and she had no intention of killing her. She wasn't sure how much longer she could continue bluffing like this. Penelope states that, as the head of a clan that serves a god, she needs no reason to hate the spawn of evil. She says that God took pity on the people killed by Apocalypse and granted them the power to destroy them. After this, the main character begins to accumulate a huge amount of power within herself. Karina, fearing to get even one more wound, flies to the side. She notes that it was quite hot, shaking her palm. Her opponent silently casts an angry glance at her. Penelope notices her dark hair, which reflects the moonlight, her face pale as snow, and her posture like a waning moon. Her body was perfect for deceiving and controlling people. Karina suddenly notices that the real reason is not that she is an Apocalypse. She assumes that the girl is simply uncomfortable seeing her next to Renegar. Penelope angrily attacks her interlocutor, ordering her to shut up. Apocalypta remarks contentedly that it seems she was right. She wonders what she is going to do about the fact that the guy already loves someone else. The main character reminds that she told her to shut her mouth. She says that the girl simply bewitched him, and he was deceived by her dirty words. Penelope informs him that once she dies, Renegar will become himself again. Karina notes that her interlocutor is so angry that she can't land a single blow, just like Luna. She wonders if she really thinks this way, or if it is just something she wants to believe. The girl flies to the side, leaving her opponent perplexed. Karina admits that she really likes the head of Dafin. She says that she admired her beliefs and respected her good intentions, and supported everything she did in the name of God. The girl followed her tragic life, and even when one disaster after another happened, Penelope moved forward, without retreating a single step. She was glad, believing that Penelope deserved a happy ending. Karina says the saying that life is a comedy when viewed from afar perfectly suits her interlocutor. She realized that the only reason Penelope could move forward was because she was the one turning the pages. The girl reports that up close, the main character is just a pathetic person who uses the name of God and a good purpose to satisfy her selfish desires. She says that in fact, the head of Defeng does not believe in God, but only thinks that he does, because this is the only way to justify his actions. Karina concludes by noting that without using God as a shield, she would have become a common criminal. She understood that the main character would not be able to change until she took the first step. The girl wanted to push her, because otherwise she would be no better than the servants of the Apocalypse. Penelope asks, frightened, if she really is a bad person.